I think this is going to be a really good Homegrown Experience podcast because it is going to be so different, in my opinion. The reason this is going to be different is because I really feel like we're going to have a mix of listeners on here because, and I know y'all don't know much about my background, but I've got a waterfowl background. Y'all are whitetail hunters. And Austin, what I really like about what we're going to talk about is y'all are very busy with hunting and family. I'm very busy with hunting, travel, family. Austin travels a lot. He has family. We all have kids that are somewhat relatively the same age. Mine's 3 and 6. Your all's is
2 and 4.
2 and 4.
I have 2 5-year-olds and then some older ones. So
Yeah.
I got it spread, but yeah.
Austin has a little bit more experience probably in introducing his kids into the hunting world. But what I want to do first is assuming that, and again, I grew up deer hunting, but I don't have a whitetail background. So even my knowledge of your all is very limited. And I know a lot of people won't know much about my background, but what I want to do is just kind of a very brief overview, who we're with, how much time you kind of spend on the road, and raising a family. This is basically going to be a family podcast, just, introducing kids into the outdoors, the challenges that you're kind of already thinking about, like, man, how are we going to overcome some of these challenges?
Oh, for sure.
But Lee and Tiffany Lakosky, you all start off. Just give me a brief overview of who you are, what you do, and we'll kind of go around the table, and then we'll get this thing rocking.
All right, Lee Lakosky and
Tiffany Lakosky.
yeah, and we have a show, The Crush with Lee and Tiffany, and we've been doing it for going into our 17th year.
Hard to believe, but yeah, 17 years.
Yeah, the year we got married.
That's how we
basically.
remember. Otherwise, we would never remember.
Yeah, so and now just we're all smooth sailing. We had it all figured out, and then throw 2 kids in the mix, and now we're trying to refigure it out how to do it. So we've been doing the show for a long time, but a lot has changed in the last few years, just with the kids and
My mom
and
passing
your
away.
mom passing away and stuff. So it's a whole nother monster for us.
I
right
feel
now.
like we're
trying to
failing
figure
about 80% of the time, but our kids seem to be happy, so I guess we're doing something right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Austin?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm 47 and I've got 5 kids, 3 of which are older from a previous marriage, 17, 15, and 13. And then I got remarried to my wife, Janie, and we have 2 5-year-old twins. So, I've got, like, on both sides, I always say I've got, the little kids, it's kind of, physical exhaustion. And then the older kids, it's more mental. So it's more mental exhaustion. But I've learned how to balance it all out, I think. And like the rest of us, we travel quite a bit. And, I'm fortunate that, my older kids have all developed a love for hunting. So I have had a little experience with that, but I'm still learning. So
Yeah, that's awesome. My name is Field Hudnall, and basically ever since before college, I've been obsessed with waterfowl hunting. Got into Actually, I left college to get a job with building duck and goose calls, editing video, shooting video, and ever since then I've dedicated my life to waterfowl and turkey. So most of my life and my career through building calls, traveling, doing shows, a lot of my experience is, again, behind the camera and in front of the camera, but a lot of time on the road. So now my brother and I, we own a call company. We build duck, goose, and turkey calls. When my first child that I had, I was hosting DUTV. Did that for 6 years, and literally I left the hospital. I didn't get to take my child home because we're going to Prince Edward Island to video a duck hunt. So my wife, it was my work. That's what pays the bills, and she's in the hospital, and I'm like, sweetie, I'm leaving to go hunting.
Right.
But even now, like, we do a lot of direct consumer shows. I see you all at, like, NWTF. You all go to NRA Great American Outdoor Show.
Yep.
See y'all at a lot of the same shows. And, it was easy early on. We just took our kids to the shows because you push them in a stroller. Well, now you take a 6-year-old to a show.
Oh, my gosh.
They'll rip the show apart.
Yeah. It is amazing.
So it's always changing. But what I really want to get into is just kind of, my wife and I, we have this conversation on a daily basis. And I'm, as a father and as a hunter, I look at my kids and I think about the environment that I was brought up in as a hunter, what my dad did to me, if you put it that way, me and my brother and I, the things that he did that led me down the path to where I'm at now. And I know how much I love hunting and fishing. And I want my kids to love it as much as I do. And I'm kind of like thinking, how do I pass that on? And I don't know. I don't have the answers.
That's a struggle.
I'm not here to instruct. I'm just, I want to know kind of like what Austin's done a little bit, and what you all, and what I love about you all is you take your kids everywhere. Last year you all met you all for the first time in person here at Austin's place, and you all had the kids. You brought the kids again this year.
Yeah.
Involving the kids with what you do and your travels I think is huge. So, Lee and Tiffany, what was your all's upbringing like? Did your parents introduce you into hunting? What was? And again, Homegrown Experiences, it's not just about the hunting and the fishing, but it's the storyline of what takes people to their final destination. Where you are today, what events happened in your life, significant events that brought you where you are now.
Right, and it's scary. I mean, it is just talking about, Tiffany and I talk about it daily, basically, about how we're going to raise these kids and stuff. And even for me, it's like going back to the first part of the question is, my dad brought us, my brother and I, deer hunting and all my uncles and stuff. And it was just a pretty big history of that. And that's something I look forward to every year, but it was just gun hunting. We just had 2 weekends, and that's something I look forward to all the time.
In northern Minnesota.
Yeah, where there really were no deer. I mean, very few. And, Tiffany will always ask me, she said, how'd you be turning such a deer nut when you never even saw any? But like you, I grew up mostly waterfowl hunting because the deer hunting was just terrible. So it was like, okay, we deer hunted only for a couple of weeks, with guns, and then I just waterfowl hunted, pheasant hunted, upland bird hunted, grouse and pheasants. And so that was kind of my real passion growing up, but the deer were always in the back of my mind, and mostly because that's the way my mind works. If I can't figure something out, I'm going to figure it out. I mean, I was a chemical engineer before that too, and I think that's just my personality is I got to figure it out. And I think when I wasn't killing deer, and my grandpa at his house had just big stacks of Outdoor Life magazine and Sports Afield and stuff. I would just read and read and read and read and read. And I just thought it was because I wasn't good enough. I didn't know. I needed to learn. And then, and that's what kind of led me to where I'm at, was just that passion for it, because I couldn't figure them out early. Okay, now that I got the land in Iowa and everything else, you got it pretty well figured out, and you look back at it and it's like, well, it doesn't matter what I did. There really wasn't any deer there with the snow and wolves and stuff, but that's what really drove a passion for it, was because I couldn't figure it out. And that's the hard part when it brings the kids. I would love to see, I want to see our kids just loving the outdoors like we do. But, when back then it was, because I deer hunted 2 weekends a year, and now we can do it all the time, and he's around deer. I mean, there's deer in our yard and all over the place, and it's just like, boy, because you hear people, I can't wait to see Cameron's be shooting his first Boone and Crockett at 6 years old. I was like, no, that's not happening, because
Right.
I don't want it to be too easy for him. Like when I was a kid, I think that's maybe why I loved it, was because there were none, and it was hard, and you couldn't figure them out, and it was always that challenge of figuring it out. But for Cameron right now, he's like, well, I'm going over at Grandma's house, and I see these giant bucks standing in the driveway. Mm-hmm. So that's why I'm like, there's not going to be any muzzleloaders, not going to be any crossbows. It's going to be with a bow only. And so he might not shoot one until he's 12 or 13 years old, but it's like, okay, I want you to put in the time and the work and the effort, because I want it to be difficult. Because if it's easy, then they just get bored with it.
Yeah.
So that's the struggle for us, is like, okay, since we're around it all the time, it's not just, 2 weeks of the year, like even here, like every night, where are you going, Dad? We gotta go hunting. That's okay. You're going hunting, so they're around it all the time.
You don't want them to get numb to it.
Exactly.
So I was going to ask you also, I heard you say earlier, outside of Minneapolis, what part of Minnesota?
Yeah, just the first, Columbia Heights, the first suburb
north of
Minneapolis.
Minneapolis.
How far is that from Anoka?
Very
Not
close.
very far.
'Cause
My sister-in-law lives there right now.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
Jill.
Yeah,
Yep.
my sister lives in Anoka, right across from the high school.
Right
You can see the
across
high
from the high
school.
school.
I know
from her.
exactly where it's at, because we always used to go up there to Game Fair, and
Yeah.
now
Oh, yeah,
it's
yep.
we did Game Fair for
That's where
how
we
many
pheasant.
years?
It's weird because I can see where Game Fair is. That's when like my dad, when he first moved down there, I mean, Columbia Heights is like the city now.
Yeah.
But when my dad first moved down there, that was all the country.
Right.
And that's where he pheasant hunted. He pheasant hunted in Anoka. And there was nothing there. It was
Right.
like, it was like the way, Grand Rapids or International Falls would be now. You could just go out, and like when we were kids, we'd snowmobile right from our house around the little lakes, like Sullivan's Lake up by our house and stuff. So it's changed a lot. But it was pretty much the country then, but it's certainly not now. But that's the way we grew up, was kind of, it was kind of still in the city, but it was still country enough. But then we went up to my grandparents' house in northern Minnesota. So then up there, that's all I did. I I slept in my Uncle Mickey's room. When the sun came up, I had the blinds open. So as soon as the first
Yeah.
light peeked out, I was up and out hunting rabbits or grouse or anything. All my uncles and everybody said, "Man, that kid is crazy." 'Cause I was gone before anybody got up, and I was just out with my BB gun, or as I got a little older, my 22. But I've always just been nuts about hunting, and everyone will tell you that knows me is like, "Oh my gosh, that kid even when he was 6 years old, he was just his one-track mind was on."
Right.
That's what I
on
noticed
hunting.
about Minnesota. So we sell calls all over the country. And Austin, I'm not kidding, Minnesota, you go up there, it's like, this is outside looking in. You're either gonna become I want to make sure I use the right term, metrosexual, downtown Minneapolis, latest cutting edge, with style, or you're a diehard outdoorsman.
Right.
I've never met more people that are just so obsessed with ice fishing, deer hunting, waterfowl hunting.
Oh,
They're crazy.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Lakes.
we sell more calls to Minnesota than we do any other state in the
Yeah.
country.
10,000 lakes and just
Yeah.
woods and streams
Oh, it's
everywhere.
insane. Yeah. And what's interesting is from a waterfowl perspective, they are very serious about their waterfowl hunting. And I didn't even think to ask you if you grew up waterfowl hunting. Everyone waterfowl hunts in Minnesota. I
Right.
mean, it is phenomenal. But no, that's very interesting.
But
Yeah.
the kid thing, I mean, I'm sure you guys were similar to I was, living in kind of the suburbs on the edge of the rural area. You had creeks and streams and just woods, and you're playing with other kids. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I think a lot of that starts just catching crawdads or, just getting dirty, building forts, that love of the outdoors, even before hunting.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that is the one thing. It's like, you're like, how do you get your kids involved and stuff? And I'm like, I feel like they see us doing what we do, and that's what they love to do. I run our dogs every day on the Ranger. Those kids know when we get up, we go run the dogs. They're like, well, let's go run the dogs. Let's go see the farms. They know. I mean, they just like want to do what their parents naturally do, at least at their ages that they're at right now. They haven't started the rebellion stage yet, but in reality, it's like I said, it's like they just want to do what we want to do, and everything that we want to do is outside. It's like I
Right.
came home from the hospital from having a baby, and I was outside like taking Cameron for a walk because I was like, oh my god, I can finally breathe,
Yeah,
So
we were
it's
out
just
bailing, we were out throwing hay bales on the trailer to feed deer when the day she went in to have Cameron.
yeah,
so
it's
Right.
true
really
story.
changed.
Just
But-
be like to be outside.
I think you see kids today and stuff today. Obviously, from all of us, things changed a bunch. When we were kids, there was no. I mean,
Social
we might have had
media.
Pong game,
Right.
Atari Pong, but there wasn't all that kind of
We
stuff.
did
So
have ColecoVision
we just
when I was a little older.
we just went outside and we played hide and go seek. We played. 'Cause
Right.
I had 5 sisters and a brother, so our family was big enough as it was. But on our block, there was lots of kids. So our parents kicked us out in the morning, and I remember on the step, all the neighborhood moms would yell out for their kid when it was supper time. We'd go in
Right.
at 5 o'clock, and we couldn't wait to get back out, and we just were outside all the time. And I think just that kind of life, kind of is. Kind of leads you into the outdoors because you're always outside. And now you see a lot of kids you can go one way or another. That's like for us, like we don't let our kids, very, very rarely watch TV. Never done it, never with a phone or never playing any games like that. It's always outside. That's what they want to do. They want to go outside. And so we wanted to kind of keep that and kind of keep them away from the video games and that kind of stuff. Because that kind of stuff with fast moving and the colors and that stuff, that's going to grab their attention.
Oh, yeah.
It's like having a piece of candy instead of a sandwich. They're
Sure.
going to want that. So we're just kind of trying to keep them away from that, for, a lot of their young life, just to have the kind of life that we had out fishing and digging in the dirt and digging worms to go fishing and that kind of stuff. And I think I'm just hoping that will lead to, a life of loving the outdoors like it was for us, and not get interested in, video games and things like that, So, whether that's a cause and effect, I don't know, but I just know
Right.
that's the way that me and all my friends, everyone on my block, were all hunters and fishermen and stuff. I remember I worked at a restaurant down when I was going to college at the University of Minnesota at Grandma's, and I remember I'd come in like at 2 a.m, come home from work, and my neighbor Paul, he was 4 houses down. I'd go and throw pennies at his window and wake him up, and it'd be 2
Because
in
you
the
didn't have
morning.
phones then.
No, there was
Yeah.
no
There's
cell
no
phones.
cell
or
phones. You'd have to
Oh,
disrupt
yeah.
the
He'd open
entire
his window.
house.
What are you doing? It'd be like 2:30 in the morning. You want to go duck hunting? And, yep. All right, I'll pick you up at 4. I'll go home and get my stuff. And there was Holiday at back at the time. It was, turned into Cub Food stuff now. But Holiday was a big store by us that was like a grocery store and stuff. But they had a giant sporting goods department. It was
Oh, yeah.
huge. It was kind of like the way that some of the Fleet Farm is, like up in Aiken or up in Brainerd is now. They have a giant, sporting goods, and it was open 24/7. So it was great, So we at 4 a.m. we'd stop in there and get shells and look at calls, whatever, and we'd go up to Cambridge and Rice Creek, and we'd push our boat in there, and you had the big paddles, and it was like pushing your boat on your lawn for a mile and a half. It was just bog, and right in the middle, a little bit of open water, and the mallards are in there like crazy. So we'd worry. I mean, it'd take us 5 hours to get out there, and you'd shoot 3 birds, and we were happy as heck, and go 5 hours back, and you'd go back and do it the next day. But you know how that goes. The waterfowlers are nuts. The preparation
Waterfowlers are
to get
nuts,
that, to get that couple hours of good shooting, you'd do about anything for it.
I remember getting the Cabela's catalogs when they first came out. I mean, this is probably in the early '80s. I mean, they were just kind of just getting started, and just being a little kid, and I never did or had access to even do a lot of those things. But just imagining myself tying flies or going fly fishing or duck hunting.
That's where they started with the flies. And the order. I remember that, seeing those magazines. The first ones, it was all fishing stuff, like fly fishing and stuff.
Do you know I still do that when I get the magazines though, like the Cabela's Bass Pros? I still just sit there and page through them, and I still enjoy doing that.
Yeah, it's a neat thing. When I was a kid, right before Christmas, I was wearing that thing out. Trying to
Pages folded and what you would like. Yep.
Yeah. I feel like you made a great point earlier, Lee. Is in anybody that hunts and fishes can relate to this conversation that has kids. Is there's expectations. Like, for example, with you all. Oh, Lee, Tiffany, I bet your kids are already shooting a bow right now. I bet they're just grouping them in there.
It's funny. It's like, no, they are not.
You're right. Exactly. My wife, when we first started, when we go to shows, especially calling contests, people are like, man, I bet your son, I bet he's already blowing a duck or goose call. I'm like, actually, no, he's not. And the expectations are, I'm like, I know I didn't start blowing a duck or goose call until I was probably 8 or 9. That's just playing. I wasn't waterfowl hunting. But my wife, she's like, you're a 2-time world champion and your kid's never blown a goose call, or you're not teaching him. Why don't you enter him in youth contests? I'm like, no. Why do that? I don't want to burn him out.
Exactly.
I'm not a sports guy. All right. In fact, I hated sports growing up. I played football from my freshman year through high school, and I hated every minute of it. I wasn't good, to be honest with you. And I just wanted to get it. I did it because I wanted to be in shape, because at that point in my life, it was going to be military. Everybody in my family's a military guy. And I remember staying out there on the football field watching geese fly over, saying, man, I wish we would get beat, so that way we're out of the playoffs and I can go goose hunting.
That's very similar to me, too. I was more interested in the hunting, and it's like, let's get done with it. Then you finally talk your parents into it. No, I don't want to be in hockey stuff anymore. I just want to play. I just want to go hunting.
Right, right. And I watch, so now my kids dabble in sports a little bit, and I'm watching, and I'm like, man, I'm watching these dads that are diehard. They're living vicariously through their kids. And they're like, son, you're going to be awesome. I'm just like, man, you're ruining your kid.
This is going
it's such an
early.
early.
All the time.
And I'm sitting here thinking, and I even see it in the hunting world. We'll be at a show, and they'll be like, yep, my boy, he just shot his first turkey at this age, or he's already blowing a duck call, or he's in the contest. I'm like, don't push them. Let them naturally gravitate to it. And because I look at, again, the way I was raised. My dad was a straight-up a-hole. Love him to death, but he was a very hard man. And discipline was very strong in our house.
Military guy.
Very strong military guy. You do not make mistakes. When we go deer hunting, if you weren't grouping, within an inch group, you're not going. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. And I just remember the way he enforced it into us. And I'm looking at it now, I'm like, my favorite thing to do in the world is turkey hunt. I'd rather do it than anything, even more than waterfowl hunting. And I remember begging my dad to go turkey hunting. Because, one, there wasn't many turkeys around here. Austin is a testament to that. They did not exist. I remember hearing my first gobbler, I think when I was 13 or 14. My brother was driving. We're fishing in a pond. You didn't spring turkey hunt. There was nothing to hunt. And I remember hearing that gobbler sound off across the street, and I'm like, oh, what is that?
Yeah.
It took me 4 years to kill my first gobbler. First year, never saw one. Second year, saw one, never got a shot. Third year, shot and missed, and I truly cried. I was 15 years old, and I remember walking back to camp in tears because I missed this bird. I'm like, I'm never going to kill one. My fourth year, I finally killed one, and it was the greatest experience of my life. I didn't kill my first turkey until I was 16, and I'd rather turkey hunt more than anything now. my son is 6, and I see a lot of people pushing their kids like, oh, get them out. The sooner they get into it, the more they're going to love it. And I don't believe that.
I don't believe it either.
I don't believe it at all. And I want to get your all's perspective.
Same thing. I see, some people pushing into sports, and I always tell Tiffany and anyone, it's like, if they love sports, great. I mean, then they can play sports. If not, I'm not going to push them, though. I mean, you look at all the time that even myself, in traveling leagues and also in hockey and stuff, all that time I wasted. I don't remember a single game of that, but I certainly remember the first Canadian fishing trip that my neighbor Don Sorensen took me on. And those are the things that just burned into my memory that I'll take those memories to my grave. And I look at all the time that people spend in sports and stuff over, their whole school years, and likely the last game they're ever going to play is their last day in high school. And it's like, look at all that time that you could have been doing stuff with them instead of having a coach spend, thousands of hours with your kids. You could have been spending that time with them doing stuff and making some great memories that you and your kids both remember. But again, there's people, a lot of kids, like my sister's kids, they're into sports the way that I was hunting. That's what they love. That's probably what they're going to remember. But I'm just, like I always tell Tiffany, that will do whatever they want to do we're going to let them do whatever they like, but I'm just hoping it's not sports. And if it is, that's golf and guitar lessons. Because those are things you do your whole life. Like you play football, well, what are you going to do with that? The last day of high school, if you don't make it into college, which, 0.5% of people even make
Plus
it to college.
Plus the concussions and everything
now.
now.
It's
right.
scary.
And it's like the last game they'll ever play. It's
Sure.
like, at least if they are in golf, that's something you do till you're 80 years old. And guitar lessons, something you play your entire life. And so you're kind of thinking about that stuff. But again, it's going to be their decision. It's not going to be ours. We're not going to push them into anything. Just kind of see which way they go. And I really like right now, like Cameron just loves music. He loves all the time.
Just naturally
play me
loves
Luke
music.
Combs, play me this. I mean, he knows all the artists and he sings to them. It's like, maybe he'll get into guitar lessons or something. But come back to the hunting thing. I didn't shoot my first deer until I was 16.
There weren't many back then.
No,
It was
and
hard.
I started hunting when I was 9. And I think you push them too early and you could burn them out on that. I just kind of let them go at their own pace. And same thing with the bow. Yeah, he's got a bow and he likes to fling a couple, but he could fling 3 or 4. Okay, let's move on to something else. Their attention span is so small.
He likes to hold it more than he likes to do
Yeah,
anything.
and show it off and work on it. He sees me working on my bow all the time, so he'll take his little Genesis bow and he puts it in the vise. I'm working on. What are you doing, Cameron? I'm working on my bow,
he likes
Dad.
to fletch arrows. He's in here fletching arrows every day.
I'm working on my bow.
Yeah.
So you just don't push him into anything like that. Just exactly like you said. I just want to let him at his own time, and like archery only to start with for deer. Won't be a muzzleloader. Won't be anything else because, like I said, I spent all those years and never even saw a deer.
Right.
Like now, for what we have, you go late season over a cornfield, you might have 200 deer out there. And it's like, you go shoot a deer with a muzzleloader at 6 years old and say, well, that wasn't very hard. I mean, how interested are you going to be? I wouldn't have been that interested in it. So, but with the bow, it's a total different story. I mean, you can see all the deer you want, but killing them, as we all know, is not the easiest thing in the world. I mean, it takes, practice and, make sure that they're confident. And that way, if they really love it, they'll put the time in and practice. And at some point in their life, like I said, mine really didn't turn on to whitetails that much until I was like a teenager. Like you said, that Paul Lamberg, my best friend, lived down the block. His dad and him started bow hunting. So then his dad just invited me to come along with. So we started bow hunting. And then like when Paul was a year older than me, when he was 16 and I was 15, man, we got a driver's license. We can go wherever we want. And then you could hunt like right in the city limits where there was, a lot more. There was still agriculture there. But we would just go knock on doors. And back in those days, people were like, you want to try shooting with a bow? Yeah, go ahead. So we had lots of places to hunt. So that's really where we learned to hunt. But it wasn't until, we were in our teens. So I don't want to push anyone, the kids too early. Just let them do what they want to do and let them be kids and, get out and get dirty. And he loves fishing right now and stuff like that. And we'll just see what happens. But he just, like you said, everyone's like, oh, yeah, he's going to shoot his first Boone and Crockett at 6. Like, no, I'm pretty sure he's not.
Right.
We'll see. Let it be on their time because I think you push them on something. Even like archery now, if you start pushing them, making them shoot his bow, they're not going to want to do it.
Well, if obviously he's your child, so if you try to make him do anything, he rebels immediately. It's like he's got Lee's exact personality.
Yeah.
But now whether we're right or wrong, who knows? I mean, I don't know. You just kind of try to do the best you can and
I just go off like
and
what
hope
my
for the
parents
best,
did, and, because it was a lot different time back then.
It was a lot different time.
yeah.
Paul Lambert and I
Absolutely.
would ride our bikes 20 miles to Rice Creek to catch carp, and we'd be there all day. And it's like, I can't imagine letting Cameron out of our sight, out of our yard for that. And so the times are different, but, it's like
well, whether you like it or not, it is easier now. I mean, there are more deer, there are more turkeys, we have better equipment, we have better knowledge. It's what I've found with my older kids is it's you can't refute that. It is going to be easier, and they're not going to have the same experience we had, kind of back in the day. But the things that I've learned that work the best is just to make it fun. I mean, even when they were little, just to, let them bring their, toys or play and just kind of sit there and not take it too seriously. Because if you make it too serious, they kind of lose interest. And, and seeing your kids here, I mean, they're just following around. They're playing with the duck calls and the goose calls over there, and they want to do what you do, and they'll mimic you and kind of want to spend time with you, but you have to let that kind of evolve on its own.
They say he likes working on his bow because he sees me working on his bow, and so but he doesn't. He shoots it some, and but he gets frustrated if it doesn't stick in the target. Sometimes
he gets mad.
Sometimes it'll pop out and stuff, But we just kind of, like you said, just let him have fun. Like we brought him turkey hunting in Illinois, and we knew it was going to be a disaster.
Oh, it was a disaster.
We
had both of them turkey hunting.
But it was fun, just make it fun for them because we didn't really care if we shot one or not. It's like, hey, they were out and they got their camo on. They loved getting, like Reagan really liked having the head net thing on. I think she's hiding under it. And, so it was a disaster for hunting, but they had a good time and we had just as good a time, because you don't always have to shoot something, but just try to make it fun for them. And like this year, we had Cameron out in a deer blind with us the first time.
It was funny. He's like, "Daddy, they're running." He's like, "What?" And he's like, "Daddy, they're running." And we look over there. We're like,
"Yeah, that's because you have your head out the window."
Daddy,
you did so good at first. You know how it is. You sit there you go out there. To sit for 2.5 hours or something.
It's a lot for a kid.
It's the last 20 minutes is when deer start coming out. So the first hour and 20 minutes, he was fine. Just playing with his trucks, and then that's what's so nice about the rednecks and stuff. They can come in there and they can make some noise and stuff in there. But then it started getting to deer 30, and then he's starting to get to the point where okay, I'm done playing tractor. I want to open the windows. I want to look outside. I want to stick my head out there. So I wasn't looking off to my left, and he had his head out the window, and he's like, "Deer are running, Dad. Deer are running." And I said, "No, they're not." And I look out the side window. I was like, "Oh yeah, they are." And I said, "That's why you can't have your head sticking out the window and yelling there. They're running."
Yeah.
So I mean, but again, we didn't care. It's just you want to have them out and just have like you said, just make sure they're having fun if you're doing it.
Well, my dad was a big golfer. I mean, he was, could have gone pro. Just we'd go, spend time together, and we'd go to the golf course, and I'd hit some golf balls. But when I was there was always a horde of people around him because he was kind of a celebrity kind of golfer in our area. And, when the times he took me hunting, which he wasn't a very big hunter or fisherman, but it was time we had just the two of us. And I think that was really a special thing for me that kind of encouraged me. And I realized early that there's such a bond when you hunt with someone else that's really quality time.
Isn't there?
Yeah, there's really quality time spent, and that was really special to me. And plus, just growing up with loving nature, I was like, wow, I can be in nature all the time with this sport. So and I just think those two kind of clicked. But I think just such a big component is the time spent with other people.
Right. And I think my dad was smart, too, the way he did it, because I have a brother, too, and we have, like, my uncles, and we had tons of us. But he would always make it a point every year that we would just go fishing together, just him and I. So we'd drive up to northern Minnesota where we'd stay at our hunting shack. We had a shack that we built for deer hunting, but there's some lakes around there. So we'd go in the summer, and we'd go, check the stands and rebuild them. And he could have brought my brother and I, but he didn't. He would just do one of us at a time just to make sure that he spent one-on-one time with you. And it goes back to, I always say this too. I said, I think you need that time with your kids doing stuff like that together. And I think, we always talk about, should we go bring them daycare or not? Do we do homeschool? Do we do this? There's all these different questions. And I said, I don't think it really, you can micromanage all this stuff. But I think, there's kids that have been homeschooled, public schools, private schools. I mean, they all can turn out the same. I mean, all of us here are all same kind of people, and we all had different upbringings. But I think the common factor in a lot of it is, for me at least, it was like when you get to that point in school where kids start smoking or drinking or going off the rails places, and they might have been good friends of mine, but still in the back of my head, you might start a little bit, and then I can't, I got to run home, I got to do something. It was never that my dad would ever hit me or anything like that. It was, what if my dad, what if he's disappointed in me? Okay, now what if he doesn't take me hunting anymore? I think that was the bond that you had to have with your kids, that you do things together, that when they get older, they'll make the right decisions if you spend time with them and they respect you and you respect them. And it's like, because it was, like I said, it's never that he would hit me. And you almost wish that they would when you do stuff, but at the time he just give you that look and walk away. You're like, oh god,
That look.
It was
Yeah.
worse than an actual spanking.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the most important thing about parenting. This is what I learned from myself. So that's why, like for us, that's we could leave them home, and once in a while, like when Linda was getting sick, you can tell us that she just didn't want to go on the road because it was hard on her. That we'd, it's okay, we'll just leave them at home with Linda, and we'll go for this week. And it was hard for us even to leave them for a week. But I think, it can be hard on the road here. Like you guys see, the kids are running around like wild men in here. He's screaming and stuff. You're like, oh my gosh, everybody's gonna hate us. He's never gonna invite us back.
No.
But everybody, like I said, all you guys, like Austin and
We have
and,
kids.
and
We're numb to it.
Enfield, yeah,
Yeah.
you guys have kids, and just like we do too. Like you used to go on an airplane, you go, oh no, the kids are sitting next to us, and now you're like, oh poor parents. You don't mind the kids. You're like, no, we say all the
Yeah.
time. You guys don't. And the parents are, we're sorry. It's like, no, we're fine.
Yeah.
You need any help with something? Can I help you? Because people have kids that kind of have your own club.
Right.
You don't realize till you have them. Okay, I'm in that club now. But that's I think that's things that just like having the kids here with us are things that they'll always remember, and just places that they've been, and just spending the time with them is the most important thing when they get older, that they'll make those right decisions instead of being worried that you're gonna ground them or be spanking them or hitting them or whatever. It's gonna be they'll be disappointed. I think if you have that relationship with your kids, that hey, you won, that's the battle right there. You won the battle, because they're going to make the good decisions on their own, because no matter what kind of school, private, public, whatever, there's going to be kids in there that take the wrong roads, and they can follow them down that road. And if you talk to them, you spend time with them, and you got their respect and stuff, they're going to choose the right road. And I think that's
At least
what's
you
most
hope.
important.
Yeah,
At least you hope.
I've had conversations with some of my friends that now have kids, and it's weird having parenting conversations. I never thought I'd have.
Right.
10 years ago, I never thought I'm going to be talking about how I'm going to discipline my kids.
Right.
I've had conversations. This kind of a big topic is: do you spank? Do you not spank? Do you time out? The ways to discipline your child. And I grew up in a family, my parents, my grandparents, spankings happened.
Well, heck, our
But
teachers did even.
Right.
When I was a
But there
kid.
wasn't that many, because there didn't have to
Didn't
be.
have
Some
to
of the
be.
worst
One time,
spankings
yeah.
I ever got, now my dad could be locked up for it. I'm talking
Yeah.
execution style. You bent over, grabbed your own ankles, the leather belt, and you truly could not sit down. But after he did that, one thing, this is advice that I do this with my kids, and I remember and I value it so much that my parents did with me. When I did get spanked, or whenever my dad disciplined us, he'd spank us, he'd send us to our room to think about it, but he always, no matter what, always came back, sat down, talked to us, gave us a hug, tell us he loved us. And that is what I genuinely remember, and I do the same thing with my kids. But there weren't that many brutally spankings.
Right, you need to do it one time, and then it's that fear.
You
of it.
knew he was serious, but then it was the look. If I was doing something wrong, he could give me the look, and I'm like, uh-oh. I'm on thin ice, and he will follow through with it.
Right.
Yeah.
I've seen parents say, I'm going to spank you if you don't act out, or I'm gonna,
Yeah,
you're gonna,
they never
and they
done it.
never do it,
Yeah.
And that's something that, again, that I believe I do spank my kids,
We do too.
but very seldom do I have to,
Yep.
because it never gets to that point,
Right. And I think that's the way that we were brought up too. I mean, our teachers could. I remember getting whacked across the knuckles with a ruler and stuff, but it kept you in line.
Right.
I know there are people, no, we never spank them, get only timeouts and stuff like that. But hey, every kid is different. And like I was a terrible kid. You talk to my sisters.
I know. I'm
and
like,
everyone.
why am I being punished for this? Because I was not.
I mean, I was just so stubborn and so headstrong. Like, there's times like my dad would, spank you, bring you up to your room, and I'd just he'd shut the door and say, you think about that. Just like you said, it was the same thing. And I'd open the door and I'd follow him right back
Remember,
down
they
on
had
his
7
heel.
kids, so his dad
And so my
finally.
dad would grab
Were
me
you
by
the
whatever.
first?
No, I was right in the
firstborn?
middle.
Oh, you're right in the middle.
Yeah, he'd grab me by the hair and lift me back up there, and I'd just turn around, follow him right back down. I was just so stubborn, and my dad just like now, back then it wasn't, you thought that he was really mad, but at the time he was probably like, just like Tiffany and I do, we laugh a lot of times, like, man, look at this kid. But he's like me. He's very stubborn and very set in his ways and stuff. But you need that. I mean, some kids are like Reagan. I can look at her give her a cross look and say Reagan, and she'll start crying immediately.
Yeah.
But like Cameron,
Yeah.
it doesn't
There's a
matter. I
girl.
mean, you need to spank it. All kids are different. You can't just blanket it over. And like for Cameron, he's gonna need a spanking to know you're serious, because otherwise he's just gonna call your bluff every time. And I think
Walk all
all
over
kids
you.
all kids
Yeah.
are different, and
Oh,
that
yeah.
you can't let that
Then they
happen.
change. You think you got them pegged, and then a couple years later they do a switch around or something. So it's always changing.
I knew I was in trouble with my youngest, who's 3 now. I can't remember the exact age, and I know people are going to frown on when I tell this story, but he was young enough to where I had him up in the changing table, and I was changing his diaper. And he's constantly just kicking his legs. And he's laughing. I'm like, all right, stop. I got to change your diaper. And every time I grab him, he'd purposely thrust his waist and kick his legs out. I go, you do it again, I'm going to pop your butt. And he's looking at me. Sure enough, he does it again. I'm like, okay. I grab his legs. I smack his little butt. He sits there and looks at me. And I can picture it like it was yesterday. He looks at me, rolls over, and smacks his own butt right there in front of me, and just kind of stares at me. And I
you're
go,
like,
Jess,
right.
I need help. I'm in trouble. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm in trouble. So, yeah, but, and this is kind of how I want to move into the next topic is, kids are different personalities.
Yeah.
You have one. I remember our first child, Knox. He slept through the night. Easy, baby. And it's like, man, this parenting stuff is easy. Number 2, I tell my 3-year-old now that you're lucky you're a number 2, because if you're a number 1,
You would have not had.
we
any
wouldn't
more.
have had another
Yep.
one. It was
Right.
like one and done.
You hear
But
that all the time.
what I want to move into next is, so, and there's a lot of parents out there, they have multiple kids. They want to introduce them into hunting and fishing. You have different personalities. So I feel like, in Austin, you've got more experience with this than we do even. How do you, as far as introducing them, like right now, I know that if we went out and shot a limit of doves and I went back to the house, my 3-year-old would be right there just ripping feathers out. Are we going to eat these? He's all about shooting, eating, and killing everything. My 6-year-old, he's more of a creative child. He loves, Legos, and he loves movies and stuff, and he's got more of a very innocent personality. And he'll walk up, and I'll be cleaning doves, and I can just see he's kind of like, I guess my question is introducing kids to hunting and fishing, you're now introducing them into life and death. What it means, you're going to take these lives, you're going to eat them and I'm right smack in the middle of it. So I'm at the age now that grandparents are passing, so we're
Yeah.
going to funerals now. We just had a dog that we've had for 13 years pass. And so death is very relevant now. Well, then you've got, all right, we're going to go out and kill this animal, and then we're going to eat it. My 3-year-old cracks me up because he's so innocent. He'll point at a dog. Daddy, we don't eat dogs. No, son, we don't eat dogs. We eat deer. You're right, we eat deer, but we don't eat reindeer. We don't eat Santa's reindeer. I'm like, no, we don't eat Santa's reindeer, but we do eat deer. And we were at a crappie fishing tournament weighing in a bald eagle. He goes, shoot it. And I'm like, no, you've never seen that. No, we don't. But he's very curious, and he's open to it. And he'll eat anything. My 6-year-old, he doesn't like he likes chicken nuggets. As far as meat, deer meat, rare steak, he's not into it. And I'm just, introducing them into life and death. It's not a cartoon. It's not, all the animals are not out in the woods frolicking together, talking together.
Mama and Daddy do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that.
They're not-
Bambi.
they're not
I know
crying
Disney
over-
has not done hunters any favor.
No, it hasn't. And
But he's seeing it. That's the thing. You can verbalize it to him, but he's seeing, you coming home with a pile of ducks, or, he's seeing things like my children grew up out here on the farm, so they saw, puppies being born, or, chickens running around and trying to breed and all these things. So they saw kind of life, death, birth, all the things, and they never really, it just became second nature to them. I think it more clicked on their own than trying to kind of verbalize it to them or explain it to them in that
Right.
way.
right.
Later on they've asked questions and things, but all my kids, my older kids, both my daughters have killed turkeys and deer, and my son, and seeing them sometimes were clean kills and sometimes they weren't, and they kind of saw that part of it as well. And I never really heard anything from them, asking, what's going on. They just kind of see it as a part of the process, I guess.
Right.
So.
I had a little bit more, a very different upbringing than probably a lot of kids. So my dad was a USDA meat inspector. So he worked at different cattle kills and, plants, USDA kills, and there was one up in Warsaw, Kentucky, and it was actually one of the worst kill floors you could go to. I mean, everyone that worked there, they're all felons, but they're all great. They loved us. Oh, gosh, I was probably 6, 5, probably 5, 6, 7, 8. That was the years that I was there. My brother was a little bit older. My dad would take us to work. We're standing there on the kill floor and watching cattle get slaughtered by the thousands,
Yeah.
I didn't think anything of it. You'd walk out to the holding pens and there's all these cows staring at you. I didn't feel sorry. It was just a way of life. This is what happens. And then when you're in there, they'd bring them in the knocking box. They'd knock them, then they'd pull them up, then they'd bleed them out, and then they're skinning them. And I'm sitting there like playing with the hearts, looking at them, and I was interested. I never felt like remorse, or it was just, this is what Dad does. This is where our meat comes from, and there wasn't anything to question. So that's kind of in growing up. When there was a raccoon in the yard, it got shot. When there was a possum, it got shot. It was just, that was life, the way I was brought up.
Same
So
for me too. I
right.
think, there was a meat market right down. There was deer. I'd go down. I was so infatuated with deer. Like I said, you go down there and people were bringing all their deer in, and it never occurred to me, about, hey, someone's killing me or anything like that. I think it was always normal because we grew up hunting and stuff, and I'd trap squirrels and all that stuff, and stuff I probably wouldn't even do today. You trap a squirrel, and I got to get a stick and crack it over the head to kill it. You don't want to put a hole in the hide and stuff.
Right.
Stuff, that, okay, yeah, I never really even thought of it. But I think maybe as you get older, you overthink that stuff. I think kids are, they're just more adaptable to whatever you're doing, and as long as they see it in their world, it's like, hey, that's normal. It's not, I don't know that a kid really thinks about it that way until you get older.
Sure.
So that you may overthink it as a parent because you think that way. That doesn't mean that they think that way. I think they kind of get it more than you think. Because like you said, I'm the same way. I don't ever remember thinking, oh, someone's killing a poor deer. It's like, no, as you go deer hunting, we eat these things. I mean, it wasn't like, hey, I don't know. I guess it was more of a reality of where your food comes from, where maybe city kids don't. They think, oh, it comes from a,
Grocery store.
Yeah, a widget,
Right.
and
There's more trouble from their friends these days. Oh, you're a hunter, and you're killing the poor. That's where you'll run into challenges when they get older a little bit. But teaching them how to answer that question is important.
Well, and I think too, you got to realize where we live. I mean, we live in southeast Iowa. It's like farm community, country community, hunting community. Yeah, everybody hunts. I mean, we're still. I mean, shoot, they still put Christmas trees up at school.
Yeah, I mean, it's Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah, they still say the Pledge of Allegiance. You still have holidays. So we're
you just got to teach them. It's like, look, look at these, for veal and the little places that a cow sits in there for, its entire life and then gets killed and they don't get to even walk. And you see like a slaughterhouse, like you're saying, and that, all the steers are 6 months old or whatever that they slaughter. And our deer, the average lifespan of a deer in the wild is 3 years old, and we don't shoot any of ours till 5 and 6. I mean, they're getting 2 years older because they live on our farm than they would if they didn't.
It turns out that that's kind of the same conversation you have with anti-hunters.
Exactly.
In all reality, it's like our 5-year-olds are anti-hunters.
I always tell people, it's people that are anti-hunters that are. If you got some people that are, sane that will sit down and talk to you, a lot of them won't. But they're just friends that maybe question it. It's like, I can't believe you do it. Kill those animals. They're beautiful. And I said, yeah, I think they're beautiful too. I love them, and that's why I feed thousands of them, and we shoot a dozen. And I said, but you look at it as like the way that you eat, like cows and leather and all that kind of stuff that they get killed like that. I said, there's more animals alive today because I'm on this planet than are dead. Look at all the money and time I spend on all these food plots and stuff. Look at the turkeys and everything from raccoons to birds to deer. And it's like there's 3 times the population of deer on our farm now than there was before. And I said, I just make sure that they're all healthy. And I mean, it kills me. Like I said, I hear you have an EHD right now. I mean, it kills us when you see that. And not because, I'm losing a deer I wanted to shoot. It's just because you feel sorry for them because they're animals that you love.
Yeah. Right.
But, you look at all animals in general, like I said, from birds to, gophers to everything. On our farms, there's way more animals right now on our farms because of the food and the treatment that we give them.
Maybe not possums.
Yeah, well, possums, yeah, because they break turkey eggs.
shoot
So
those,
we,
yeah.
I'm
we shoot a
starting
lot
to
of
question
possums.
that now because they eat so many ticks, I guess. Now,
Possums?
that's
No.
yes.
I know. I heard a
Don't make me
rumor.
Google it.
I heard
Well-
they eat almost their weight in ticks a year. I don't know if
Well,
it's
they're
true.
failing
well,
at
yeah,
it.
Yeah.
but we get chickens and stuff in like in
Right.
the yards to do that. So,
Yeah.
because they
Guineas
don't
are good
break
too
your
for
yeah
that, I
guineas
guess.
yeah.
But they're so loud and annoying. Who wants a guinea in
Yeah,
their
nobody
yard?
likes to have
But
those.
but get back to the question. That's why the way that I always talk to these people, like when even Mark Womack's wife.
Yeah,
Brianne came over the
Brianne.
first time. She was kind of on the they're kind of from a liberal family and stuff.
Sure.
And you start showing them, it's like, no, we love these animals. You don't shoot them. Like, hey, I want to shoot everything that's
Yeah.
out here. So, man, I love these things. I spend 90% of my income that we make. We could have big houses and we could have lots of stuff, but we spend all that money that we make on giving it back to nature, basically.
Right,
For
yeah.
feeding these things and putting it. Improving habitat from pear trees to apple trees, and just like yourself, and you know that how much money that takes and time and stuff. But just we kill a couple, but I feed thousands.
And it's not just deer. I mean, what's good for
Yeah.
a deer is good for,
Good for everything.
everything.
songbirds or butterflies, anything.
Right,
You're
you
just
got your
increasing.
CRP and you put in flowers. Okay, we need pollinator strips for the butterflies that are and bees and all that stuff. And it's just the whole thing. Every piece of property that we have is geared towards nature, not killing stuff. I mean, yeah, we shoot a few, but like I said, these deer that we shoot are 5 and 6 years old. They already made it 2 and 3 years older than they would have if we weren't here. The average age is 3 years old.
Yeah.
If you take
So
the
you're-
time to someone and you can have
Right.
that conversation, they get it. But it's the picture of the bloody deer or the dead deer that gets a lot of people. And
Yeah, but if they went to a slaughterhouse like you're talking, boy,
Yeah.
that would imprint in their mind a heck of a lot more than a deer that was
Sure.
shot. You
Yeah.
know. So it's one of those things that if if it's somebody that's like, I'm always open-minded, even people anti-hunters, I'm always willing to listen
Yeah,
to
we're
them
always.
and hear what they have
open.
to say and
Yeah.
just say, well, I respect your opinion, but this is mine. And as long as we can respect each other, we'll all get along fine. And that's the
Right.
whole problem with the world right now. If
Yeah.
people don't respect others' opinion, that there are different people and different opinions, just like we're talking about. Some kids
Yeah.
are into sports, some aren't. So everyone's different. You can't lump everybody into the same.
well, the trophy hunting thing gets me. People just see it as, oh, you're just trophy hunting. Well, yeah, I mean, I like shooting a mature deer. I like enjoying the antlers. I get the food. I'm creating this great habitat. It's not just that. It's the whole thing. You can eat the great meat. You can have the
Right.
trophy to remember the
Why
hunt.
not let that deer grow, to live to old age, just like we
Yeah.
all would love to live to old age, and it's like you said, the average deer in the wild will be is 3 years old. And here we let them get to 6, and
Right.
and it's not like I said, it is, you might not enjoy the antlers, and for me, it's just the challenge. It's the older they get, the harder they are. So I mean, how hard would it be to go shoot yearling bucks or something like that? So if you're not that's not. I want more of a challenge to it. So there's selfish things, but it also, as far as management side, and just that those genetics are passed down through, and it's not just the young bucks that are doing the breeding, and it's the way it should be if there was no hunting. But also, I was talking to a biologist out in Utah, and he's like, a lot of people don't realize that what hunting does, because he said before there were people here, elk were just basically plains animals. They lived in the plains, and deer and sheep lived in the mountains. So then by people coming and starting to change things, and these are going to crop fields and different things that push the elk into the mountains. And he said that basically elk and like mule deer do not mix. He said you'll still see them together, but he said it's like oil and water. You can mix them up in a bottle and it'll mix, but it'll settle out.
Right.
He said they won't live together for long periods of time. And he said, so if it wasn't for like hunting, like keeping elk numbers at a certain spot, mule deer would be gone. So they'd be extinct if there was no hunting, because they would just move them out, and then they die out in the plains because just predation, and they have no cover in the way that things that they eat and things. He said, so it's very important right now. People don't really understand is that there has to be a mix of the right number of elk and the right number of deer, because one will overtake each other. So you look how many species have gone extinct. It's thousands and thousands of them. But it would be a heck of a lot more species would be extinct if you weren't doing things to control that right now.
Right.
He said, so, if there was no hunting, certain species would just overtake things like coyotes and stuff like that, and maybe rabbits would be gone. I mean, a lot of things would be extinct if you just let it go.
That's a misconception.
Yeah.
People think animals are just going to live on their own and manage their own populations, but we're humans on this planet. We've altered the landscape, you know, and we have to be stewards of the land, and through conservation and science to manage these populations. We've done a great job, I think, as hunters in the last hundreds of years, to turn the things away from where they were becoming extinct.
Turkeys were almost extinct, and look at what the hunters have done with that, and even elk, like the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. And it's just how many? It was up to 8 or 9 million acres that will only be elk habitat. It can never be developed or anything like that. That's what the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation does. I mean, there's no PETA organization that's done anything like that. They spend their money on billboards and paying Hollywood people to do stuff. But the hunters are the ones that really actually do anything about it. Hey, if there's like when turkeys were getting the numbers really low, it was the hunters that stepped up, and biologists and everything that introduced them all over the place. And now there's more turkeys than there's ever been. And that's that's when something needs help, you go out there and do it. But that's what hunting and management does, and that's all those biologists and things they get paid for through hunting licenses and everything else. And you see it over in Africa and stuff where they no more elephant hunting in places. And
Kenya, they banned hunting in Kenya, and the populations have just crashed since 1977. There's no elephants.
And I don't know that area over there, but like my buddy Tom does, and he said he says when there's value on them, that's like all the rangers over there. They hire people that the poachers that they keep poachers away from them and stuff. But once there's no value on them and there's no hunting, then those rangers go away and the poachers just take over. And he said those places, the elephants will just be wiped out. There won't be any left because they don't realize that. They think they're helping by not hunting them, but it's really hurting them.
Right.
I feel like bringing it back around to like how we transfer that to our kids is what it comes down to is respect for the animals. And what I love about what I've seen what you all do, I know what Austin does, is it's the respect for the animal. And like what you all do as far as pouring money into your properties, it's about the health of the herd, the health of the animal. The hunting is actually, when it comes down to the amount
very
of time,
small part.
yes, it's very small.
Yeah,
You're not even scratching the surface.
No.
And it's and you don't have to be a property manager to transfer this to your kids. Is respect for the animal. You can do everything from like what you all do with managing the land. Like I know, just riding around with Austin, he can name dang near every plant out there, every weed, it's in passing that on to the kids. And like what he said, what's good for the deer is all the way down to the monarch butterfly, the insects, creating habitat that's good for all the animals. And it goes back to respecting the animal. I grew up in a family, we didn't own property, so land management, I don't know anything about food plots, I don't know anything about the health of the herd. But what my dad transferred to us was, all the property we hunted was either public or private. And what it came down to from a combat Vietnam veteran was respect for that animal. That animal deserves a quick, swift kill. And he comes from a different background of his experiences that, he was kind of transformed in Vietnam to where they became very numb to what they were doing. And he said, son, he goes, and this is, again, I'm not saying this is not right or wrong. This is just the way he transferred it to us. His experiences as a combat veteran, he said, you become numb to what you're doing and you lose respect. He said, this probably may not make the podcast, but he said, we didn't just kill Vietnamese. It wasn't enough. We had to, the mental game that they transferred to us, we wanted to give it back to them. Killing them wasn't enough. You had to do more to inflict the psychological warfare on them. And now that he's come out of that, an animal does not deserve what he, in his mind, some people even deserved. He goes, that's why when we would go hunting, if I know you're not going to, put a perfect shot on that animal, you don't deserve to even place a shot on that animal. The biggest fear that I had was going back to my dad and saying, Dad, I can't find the deer. I just wounded it. You talk about a night of living hell. Well, why'd you shoot? Where'd you shoot? What happened? He wanted to know every little thing about it. So going back to the respect for the animal, every deer head in our house, there were never Christmas lights on them. You don't hang a hat on their head. Even the arrow was not placed in it. You don't disrespect that animal that animal's, you respect it, everything from the hunt to the kill to the processing. And you talk about growing up with a USDA meat inspector as a dad,
Right.
processing the animal. If I busted the gut while I was gutting an animal, you talk about a royal ass ripping.
Yeah.
Because now he's looking at, all right, we have contaminated meat. I taught you better than that. You know, that's growing up under that rule. So even now, like with my kids, it's all about respecting the animal. I don't care if we're catching catfish and we're getting ready to clean catfish. You're not going to sit there and poke the fish with a stick. You know, there's curiosity. Be curious, touch the fish, don't be afraid, but you do nothing to disrespect that animal.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people that are non-hunters, they don't understand that the respect that a lot of hunters have for the animal.
Well, and you look at nature, I mean, I always tell people, I mean, nature's brutal. I mean, you look at the
Oh my
way
gosh.
an animal will hunt another animal, they aren't looking for a clean, swift kill. Sometimes these big cats or things,
Right.
they're kind of playing with it a little bit. So, you know, that's what distinguishes us as humans, that we try to do that. And, you know, nature's pretty brutal compared to us.
Yeah, and like
so.
your kids, like say from where we live with all the deer, you'll see the EHD deer that are dying. They're wandering circles in the yard and falling over and stuff, and it's terrible. And then you see ones that are, you know, sick from whatever, and their skin and bones, and they're, you know, coyotes dragging them down and all that stuff. And so you kind of get to see that's really nature. And we want to make sure that when we kill some, it's a quick, clean kill. And of course, it doesn't always happen, but you know, like I said, that's where the practice comes in. And then you say, "Are you out?" He's not, like I said, when we go all the way back to where, you know, Cameron's not going to shoot something or Reagan until they can do it with a bow. But then that takes some discipline. You're going to have to learn to shoot and make sure that, okay, you're pulling up weight to where I feel like, oh yeah, you're ready to go, you know. And so that will, you know, show some discipline on their part that they're going to have to practice. But also, hey, we got to make good, clean shots on these, because I mean, it doesn't always happen. So don't get, you know, too panicked if it doesn't, because we all know they move and
It's
that
gonna
kind of
happen,
stuff.
right.
It's
It's
going to
gonna
happen.
happen.
So you don't want that, but I just want to make sure that, hey, you did your part, you know, did the best that you can, and you know, to respect these animals. So, you know, I think that'll definitely come through. Like you said, your kids kind of learn from what you do, and all of us here, I think, are all that way. You love those animals, you respect them so much, and just, you know, even like all the duck stuff, and you know, the habitat you do for ducks and things. Like I know, like Luke Bryan is, and he's got a big place that he invites us down to, and you go duck hunting. But you know, the things that people do for those, and you know, improve the habitat and flood the fields and stuff. And of course, it's to have good duck hunting, but it's still at the same time, it's all about creating good habitat for them. That, you know, you're going to shoot a small percentage of those ducks, but you want to make sure that they have feed and stuff, and they make it, you know, that they can make it through and survive and stuff. So it's, you know, it's all, everybody, I think, all the hunters, if you try, the more you try to make it better, the more it's better hunting, but it's still better for the environment and better for those animals too at the same time.
What's it been like, you know, kind of switching gears a little bit, you know, growing up as whitetail hunters? I know, Tiffany, you kind of grew up hunting in the area a little bit in Minnesota, right? Or
No.
when
I
did you start hunting?
I grew up right by Lee in the cities, and I spent a lot of time up at the cabin, though. Outside.
So you got into it later with
I got
Lee.
into it
fishing.
way
I was
later.
like
I
fishing with her
spent
dad.
fishing.
Okay.
Yep, I was up north fishing and stuff, but never ever hunted. And I didn't start hunting until a couple of years into dating Lee,
Wow.
actually.
Well-
and even that, I started shooting a bow well before I started shooting.
But you started
animal.
deer hunting for a long while before you kind of started doing all this travel stuff, right? Or
Well, you know, I was a flight attendant at the time, so I was
wow.
always traveling. I think actually, I think that's why Lee was actually dating me. Well, when we
Free
first
flights.
met, I was in college, but
'Cause
then
you had
afterwards,
Delta
I
miles?
had free flights. Yeah, we could go anywhere.
yeah.
And no, I had no knowledge of deer whatsoever, and I can't even remember ever seeing them up north when we were there. Maybe a doe or something here. Or
Yeah,
there,
it's funny because like with her mom, you know, her and her mom lived together. And,
Yeah, my dad had passed away.
yeah, and her brother had moved out, so just the two of them. And you want to go shed hunting? She's like, yeah, let's go. And then she talked to her mom. We're gonna go shed hunting. Mom's like, shed hunting? What? Like for a garage? She's like, I don't know. I don't know
I'm
what
like,
it
I don't
means.
know,
but
we're
I'm
just
gonna
dating.
go.
So, I mean, you know, it's
Yeah.
like true love back then,
Sounds
So
great,
you're like,
yeah.
yeah, we'll just go try it. But yeah, so I didn't start hunting until I started dating Lee. So I think it's like, you know, you have your new hunters, you have your kid hunters, and it's like kind of different ways you want them to be involved and how to get them involved. Because I think for like me, so we started shooting together all the time, and it was just kind of a natural progression. He worked in an archery shop. I just wanted to be with him, so I started being in an archery shop, And I started fletching arrows randomly and just cleaning up around there. And it wasn't too long after that. He's like, do you want to shoot a bow? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. Maybe it'll look like fun. I mean, it looks like the one thing that I was kind of lacking in my life is something like that. I mean, I was in sports, but I didn't have anything that I just had a passion for. And so here's a tip for you guys out there, too. It's like have someone else work with your girlfriend or wife when you're teaching them to shoot a bow.
And I was smart enough then,
and
too.
he was smart enough then to do it. That worked out really well.
Shop. I had one of my friends, Ron Cormier, a pro shooter, say, hey, can you just work with her first and stuff, because it's,
It's different.
Yeah, it's different.
I do that with Janie. I've tried to teach Janie, and it's hard, and I've learned.
You'd be way better off having a teacher.
So, hang on. Not to interrupt, but at the end of the podcast, we're starting a tradition where everyone goes around and gives a tip or just a piece of advice. So you're already
I've
there.
got lots of
I was going to
advice.
say you can do a different one, but I didn't want to the last couple podcasts, I've kind of blindsided people, like, "Hey, give a piece of worldly advice."
Oh,
to our
gosh, no, that
listeners.
was an easy one.
And it could be it can be completely off topic. It doesn't have to be related to anything we're talking about, but just put that in the back of your mind.
Yeah, and we always kind of gravitate to kind of the same message. It seems
does.
like,
it does.
It is funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he was like, do you want, and we started shooting 3D tournaments. And, here's another one, though, that was so funny because I was a pretty good shot right off the bat. It's like, it's just kind of like my little cousin Katie. It's like you take somebody who's got good equipment, learns the right way right off the bat. It's like they're going to be successful, especially if they're
any kind of athletic ability and good hand-eye coordination.
And if you have a good teacher, you know. So I was pretty good. I was really good. I was a good shot right away. So we started shooting 3D tournaments, and I started winning the women's 3D tournaments. And Lee's like, all right, you can move back to the men's stakes. And I'm like,
shoot
what
with us.
the heck?
But yeah,
I want a trophy.
We'd go shooting like 3D tournaments with like my buddies Lee Murphy and Jim Hill. They've been shooting archery for 100 years, but they started out with fingers and recurves and all that stuff, so and then moving and stuff. But then it's harder when you do that because somebody tries to teach you the right way, and you're like, no, everything's unnatural, and they're like, no, I've been shooting for 30 years. You don't tell me how to shoot, whatever. But then she'd start beating them, and these are guys that even for me I look up to back then and still do as some of the best hunters and archers and the ones that got me started. And so it was, for success breeds success. Right. So when she starts, beating those guys and tournaments and going to the archery shop and just smoking it all the time, and all these guys around, just a girl, a young 20-year-old girl in this room full of adult men and stuff, and she's smoking them. I mean, she wanted to come back. It was fun for her.
Yeah,
but I'm telling you, you give a girl somebody, it's outside of their element. You give them, okay, here's a release. You want to do it. And the first time they pull back, you don't tell them to keep their finger behind it. And they start pulling back, and they shoot the arrow into the ceiling, punch themselves in the nose, give them a bloody nose. I guarantee they're never coming back.
Again.
Oh, that happened to my back to the children thing. My daughter's first turkey, she got her face in the scope, and the scope caught her in the eye. And to this day, she's the one that does not like hunting. From that time, she was like 9
one
years
event
old.
ruined them.
Yeah, it really ruined her.
It's really touchy, especially
you gotta be
with
careful.
girls on
You gotta
that
be
stuff.
careful on it.
Yeah.
So he was like, do you want to try hunting? And I was like, I don't know. I
This
mean,
was
I've never
2 years
shot an
after
animal.
we've been.
Wow.
I don't know if
after
I
we
want to
had-
shoot something.
You've been doing the 3D for that long?
Yeah, I had been
Yeah,
doing 3D
because I just never thought
Lee
that
would
she'd
always
want
go
it.
hunting like all fall long too, and I was like I said, I was a flight attendant, so he'd be like, hey, I'm going to Kansas for a month. I'm like, have fun. I'm going to Maui. So he would always just like go his separate way during the hunting season. Sometimes
Sure.
I'd sit out there with him.
Well, because I had
Sometimes
5
wouldn't,
sisters,
but-
and they didn't hunt. I guess that was just
Right.
kind of the thing. Like in our era, when we were younger, okay, the guys, like my cousins and uncles, and we all went hunting. The girls stayed home. They didn't.
Right.
And that was the same thing with our family. So none of my sisters hunted. So, and like a couple of them do now, because their husbands, were into hunting. But like, so I just never assumed that she would want to, but we would start shooting together. But then now we've been dating for going into our 3rd year or something, kind of thinking, okay, this person would get a little bit more serious. And I was like, you want to try hunting? And she's like, well, I don't know. I don't know if I could do it, but I would be willing to try. And that's the way Tiffany had, was her attitude. So I loved about it. You could say, want to go skydiving? Yeah, sure, let's do it. It'd be
That's
fun. It
great.
was always anything you want to
Sure.
do. It was always, yep, I'm up for it. Let's go do it. So even that night we went out was the very first night, and it was on one of my places in Scandia, and it's Big Alfalfa Field. It was opening day, and she's
Open day in Minnesota.
Yeah, September 15th, and she didn't know. The whole time she said, I don't know if I shoot one. We'll see when it comes
See what
out.
happens, yeah.
And it was like we weren't there very long, and these 3 bucks come out, and she's like, I'm shooting. She knew right away when they came out, though. I'm shooting.
Kill it.
And it was out there like 20 yards. We walked right in. She smoked it and ran right out in the alfalfa and fell over. And she was so pumped. I mean, calling
Wow.
Murphy and Hill
the
and
guys at the
everybody
archery
and
shop.
pictures and the guys in the archery shop. Because everybody at the archery shop knew her through
Yeah.
me and that she'd been there all the time. And I think she saw it right then. Was like, hey, this
It clicked.
Yeah. She's like, and now and she loved it ever since. And like you always say, it's like where else I could call somebody at 4 a.m. and say, I hit a
to
deer.
this day,
It's like a
I
whole
mean,
club
actually,
you're in.
Lee was just
Right.
talking to one of our friends, Brad True, the other night. I'm like, who in the world are you talking to? He's like, Brad, it was about this experience and, elk hunting and this and that. And I'm like, oh, God, yeah. But I was like, before I said it's almost like this little exclusive club that I think people don't really know or understand that exists. I was like, I don't know what I used to do with all my time, in all honesty, well before I used to shoot a bow or just enjoy being outside or, I mean, obviously I fished, but still it's like, I don't know what I used to do with my time, but I was like, I know that now it's like filled with so many better things just because I started to hunt and shoot.
It's very
and
rich. It's
it
a
really,
rich life.
really is.
Yeah.
Like I said, you could call anybody in this room right now because you said you bond, like you were saying you bond, and it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know you very well, but after
Yeah.
this, I'd be like, I follow you on Instagram and stuff like that, and now I'll be
Yeah.
like, oh, how was your hunt? How was this? How are your kids and stuff?
Yeah.
It's just like hunting's our common interest, but
Great.
it makes a bond that I don't think people really understand unless
Like you
you
said,
you
there's
do
nothing
it.
else. Like somebody could call you at 3 a.m. Hey, I missed my flight.
Not only,
Can you bring me
yeah,
to the airport?
I was
And
going to say, not
you'd be,
only can you help them,
Yeah.
But somebody calls you at 3 a.m. I hit this buck and I hit him back a little far and I lost blood. All right, where are you?
Where
I'll
are
be
you?
right
We'll
out
go
there.
help-
Let me
we'll
help
go
you.
help.
Yeah.
You'd just be anxious to get out there. It's like, anybody, you call somebody at any time. It doesn't matter what. You could work night shift and it could be, you just fall asleep. Somebody calls you and you might be mad about it. If they call something about a deer, I hit one or something. That's out the window. It's like, okay, all right, I'll be right there. What do you need? Where are you at? I'll help you. You can call
our
somebody at any
taxidermist
time.
just did that. He hit one in the shoulder, and he's like,
Call me right
play
from
by
the field.
play. Yeah,
Okay,
play
I'm
by
watching
play.
him right now. He's bed now. What should I do? So I was like, okay, how far are you from us? Because we were in Colorado at the time too. It's like, oh dang, if it was a little bit closer, he's like 4 hours away. If it was just a couple hours away, I could
'Cause we didn't have a
come
car,
and
'cause our
come and
Earth
get
Rover
me,
was
and I can
being
come out there and I
fixed.
can help you, and I can watch for you. You're just always so willing to help. It's like a whole a
the-
club that you're in once you're a hunter. That anyone calls you, anything. There's
Right.
no inconvenient time. There's nothing you could ask me that'd be too big of a favor. I help anybody on anything when it comes to hunting. I
And
drop
that's
everything
so
I'm doing.
genuine with you guys. You sense that. I mean, I see you guys at these shows with people lined up to talk to you, and you all really take the time to talk to all these people
Oh,
because
everyone.
you have that bond even with strangers.
Oh,
you
for
know?
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely.
I'll talk deer all day long.
Mm-hmm.
People ask any podcasts like this, anything. Yep, I'm doing.
Yeah.
Someone wants to talk deer, I'll talk deer all day long.
Right.
Some of these guys are doing it's like a 15-minute podcast. That's it.
Yeah.
We didn't even get to.
Yeah.
Can't we do an
anything
all-day one or
interesting.
something?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Tiffany, back then, I don't know what year that was. There, you probably saw other females, maybe a few out hunting, but deer hunting. But now it seems like that
Very
sport's
few.
growing. Is that
Yeah.
growing with female? Do you know anything about the numbers of females?
I don't know the actual numbers, like right
I
off
notice
the
it though. I'm seeing
top
more
of my
and
head,
more.
but it's gotten way major. And I mean, I think too, it's like, you don't have to be your hardcore hunters and stuff. But I mean, I know like for like Lee and I as like a husband and wife, I know that it's definitely, if you've been married a while, you have your ups and downs in marriage. It's like marriage is not easy. You go through deaths, you go through sicknesses, you go through babies, you go through so many things. But the one thing that always like brings us back together on everything is just like, hey, do you want to go turkey hunting? And it's just him and I. And obviously now we have kids. I mean, those are like our date nights. I mean, it's just,
Right.
you have such a bond. And that's what I try to get across to like women, especially the ones that come in our line and they're like, I don't want to hunt. And I'm like, you guys got to make a compromise. How about, if he really, really wants you to go hunting and you really want him to go do this, why don't you guys, I'm like a marriage counselor. I'm like, well, why don't you go do this and then you go do this? And I can't even tell you how many of them come back the next year. They're like, I'm so glad I took that advice.
Oh, yeah.
Because now they're like, he's like, I can't even hunt anymore because she hunts all the time now. And now we got to sit together. And he's like, but it's the best thing ever. You know what I mean? It's just,
Right.
it's
What you
really
said, though,
strengthened
it.
marriages.
When we first started doing this, so we started the show in 2003, and like we'd go do the deer classics and stuff, and it was mostly guys and boys and
Yeah,
stuff in the lines.
totally.
And now when we do stuff, it's 50-50, no question.
Mm-hmm.
And there's as many young girls, like the 12-year-old girls like that come and show us pictures of the deer that they kill and stuff. It's as many as the boys. I mean, I don't see any more boys coming through and showing deer
Not
than
anymore.
you do
No,
girls.
not anymore.
And that
Well,
is such a huge change
It
from
is a change.
2003.
I mean, they say hunter numbers are dwindling, but I see a big growth in that segment.
Right.
And also just I think the archery in schools has really helped
That's
and
been a big
things
help.
like that.
Yep.
and just it seems more accessible now for everyone.
Right.
Well, and I
Right.
think too, even when I mean, I remember my uncle's hunting, but it's like, oh, I mean, I don't have a way to do that. I don't, anything, and it's like they were hardcore, and it was always cold and stuff, and you don't. I mean, obviously, I hunt a lot of days a year, but I wouldn't consider myself like a Lee. If you said, "Hey, Tiff, do you want to go sheep hunt right now in the Yukon?" I'd be like, "Ah, yeah, no, thank you." But Lee would obviously go. But it's like you don't have to be a hardcore. It's like you can go out there and enjoy dove hunting, or you can go out there turkey hunting. You don't. I mean, even when they're like, "We don't want to get up in the morning," I'm like, "Well, don't." I was like, "Hunt in the afternoons." I was like, "You don't have to be like."
Well, I
To
think
enjoy hunting, you don't have to be like, okay, it's either all or nothing. You know what I mean?
right. I think it's just you'll know if you pick the right partner, that you marry the right person, you want to spend time together with them. So I mean, just any of that stuff that you're doing, like I said, when we were dating, she would just come out and sit in a tree with me. She didn't hunt, but just it was fun to have her. I just loved having her there, and she loved being there. When she was a flight attendant, I'd be down.
Come on, it
I'd
was
be
so
down
I'd
and-
film you.
It was, but we were filming stuff, but not for like a show or anything.
Like,
just because
come
I
on,
wanted to
it's
see
'cause
the
you wanted
footage.
a
It wasn't
camera,
like,
right?
hey, you never turned it on me. It was just, hey, if a deer comes in, just film that down. Because I wanted to see, because I used to do it.
Right.
And these video cameras, like now, you can use your phone. Heck, back then
Yeah.
there were VHS tapes like this. So you were
Yeah.
trying to pick up a video of something, a deer you weren't going to shoot, and you had to haul that
He
thing
had like
around.
a doe in there, and we're all
But
excited.
I think you just want to spend time together. And like
Right.
Tiffany was a flight attendant, so that was great. I'd be down in Centerville in a hotel, deer hunting, and so she'd fly down, and I'd come pick her up, and she'd just stay in a hotel and come sit out with me and stuff. It's just, if you pick the right partner, you want to do things together, and hunting is just such a good way to get out and do things together. I mean, it's you got the spring, you got turkey season through deer and duck and pheasant, all that stuff. It's a good portion of the year that you got things that you do together. And I think just like we're talking about with your kids, you just got to do things together. I think to have a good relationship, you got to keep doing things together and do things
Right.
you enjoy together.
Well,
They
hunting.
just spend time together. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I mean, amazingly enough, you have to spend
Yeah.
time together if you
Well,
want to.
hunting, that's what I love about it. The memories are so vivid. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
can tell you where every deer I was and what tree I was near. And times, Janie, she started turkey hunting with me, and I remember every place we were, and we talk about it still all the time, all the different hunts we've turkey hunted. She's not a big game hunter. She likes shooting birds, and turkeys was about as big as she got. But it's such a great memory, compared
sure.
to, we went out to some restaurant,
Yeah,
had a dinner. I
exactly.
can't tell you
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
we were, but I remember every hunt we had together.
We noticed the same thing in the waterfowl arena. Like, it shows every year there's more and more women coming up to the counter by themselves. Like, hey, I want to learn to blow a duck call. I want to learn to blow a goose call. And then even
And
husband.
that is intimidating. So that they're doing
Yes.
that, I mean, that is
So-
major because nobody wants to look like an idiot.
And you know what? So I guess I'm still young enough to. I remember going to seminars that were put on by Nightingale Pro Staffer at a turkey seminar.
Yeah.
And I remember going to the shows saying, intimidated to walk up to that booth. And this is going to lead into something else that I want to compliment you two on. But I remember that kid going there and say, my gosh, that guy is a pro staffer. Back in the 90s, 80s,
Yeah, that was
That was
it
big.
meant a lot more than it does now, and
Right.
I'll be the first to say that. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so intimidated to go talk to that person. And I remember how that person treated me. And as I got older, I remember how some people also treated me. I'm like, man, that's not what I expected, When we are working shows, there'll be a husband and a wife come up, and he's like, they're, you can tell they're having fun together. And he'll point at her like she wants to learn to blow the call. And then I'll start working with her, and then I'll start getting her on, blowing the call, making certain sounds, and he's like, you're getting her further along than I could, which brings up to the exact same point you said. Have somebody else,
Right.
I'm not going to teach my wife to blow a duck or goose call. We'll kill each other, before we accomplish
Right.
anything. But going up through the ranks, like my number one thing when I go to shows is I don't want anyone to ever feel intimidated to come up and ask to learn something, because again, I know how it felt being on the opposite side of the table, going to the show. And now when we do seminars, like if someone actually, when we're selling calls or if I'm doing a seminar and I notice somebody being somewhat hesitant, you can read it on their face. Like, you have a
Right.
question, but you won't answer.
Yeah,
it.
they won't
They
answer.
won't
Right.
ask.
Yeah.
I'll purposely engage them to make them feel more comfortable. And that's one thing that I really love about you guys. And I'm going to go ahead and speak on your all's behalf because I've seen y'all at shows enough, and you're very engaging with your audience. Okay, and I've worked waterfowl shows, hunting shows, seminars, And I'm going to use NRA Great American Outdoor Show as an example. That show is 9 days long.
Yep.
And it is a long show. You start at, I think, 9 in the morning, and it goes till 7 at night.
Wow.
And we don't contract anybody to work our booths. My brother and I, we're there speaking on our behalfs, talking to the customers, all the customers, teaching them all to blow duck and goose calls. And by the 7th day, the 9th hour, I mean, you're exhausted.
Standing on pavement all day. And
But you two can't have a bad day.
No.
You cannot have a bad day with that one person. And that person, he's like, man, I've been waiting in line to talk to Lee and Tiffany. I've been waiting in line to talk to Harold Knight. I've been waiting in line to talk to these people. They've been waiting for that moment. And sometimes they don't realize that you've already talked to hundreds, maybe even thousands of people. And I'm complimenting them from a exhibitor, because I know what it's like. I mean, you are exhausted. At the end of a show, you are more exhausted than you are if you do a 1-hour workout. It's just like, oh my gosh, your brain hurts. But I love how you all engage every single person. In fact, I know for the reason I'm even saying this, because I've noticed it from the outside looking in, but where it really, where I know 100% y'all are as genuine as you are. It was actually last year at NWTF. We just got done doing a podcast with Nick Charney of Apex Ammunition. The show was done. I was carrying stuff back to the booth. My brother was out in the aisle, and y'all were walking by, and he just said, hey, I met y'all last year at Austin's, and y'all been at the show all day. You're exhausted, but yet you weren't, you're going to engage every person you run into as if it's a close friend.
We always do, yeah.
And that's what, and this is more for the audience listening, that I appreciate what you all do, because I know a lot of guys in the waterfowl industry that I don't want my son meeting. I don't want them to know their true colors,
right,
because I've seen both sides of it. I know them. I know, all right, here's their TV personality, but I know that person's off-camera personality.
Right.
And
yeah,
I've been more disappointed than I have been pleasantly surprised. And I've been in this since 2002. And there's been a lot of personalities that I helped create, and I'm just like, my gosh, what was I thinking with that
Created a monster.
Yes.
Yeah, like
but
for us, we
props
always
to you
do.
all, and compliments to you all on
Thank you
who
very
you
much.
are and what you do. I appreciate it.
You are right on that Great American Show. We are there. Well, we don't do it anymore now because we have, little kids.
We
and
may
just-
again, but
may
just
when they get a little older and stuff. But yeah, it's like we go there for 9 days. We barely I do take bathroom breaks.
yeah, I
No.
won't take a lunch break. And people say, do you want to take a lunch? It's like, no.
No,
kids,
we
you've
never
been
take
waiting here
lunch.
for 2 hours. Well, how would that person feel if I said,
Right.
okay, I'm going to go eat lunch. I'll be back in an hour or half hour. We would just never do that.
No.
Yeah.
And it is,
That
too,
wouldn't
you
even
see,
be a question.
yeah, and that's just who we are, though. I mean, there'd be people all the time that, like, in a booth across from us at the end of the show, they're like, oh, my God, that is amazing. I've never seen anybody spend that much time. You shake everyone's hand. I said, well, look, I love talking about deer and stuff, and I said, these are your boss. If you don't look at that, these are the people that allow us to do this, and I'm truly thankful for them. So we treat everyone like it's our boss. Would you go to your boss and blow them off? Say, no, you treat them like your boss that they are. And then, like Tiffany and I always say, it's like we love doing those shows because at least once a day, and a lot of times multiple times a day, you meet somebody that just really touches you, and and some of them are lifelong friends. Like Pastor Ken is
Yeah.
one that, and they're just people that have been friends their entire life, and that's why we even go to out to Harrisburg still, because it's like it's far away and now with kids and everything, but we still make it a point to go even if it's for a weekend, because there's people from that show that will be lifelong friends of ours. So we want to go out there.
Fans of ours for they
Yeah,
support
for
everything we
15
do.
years and stuff. Say we want to go out there and see those people and at least give a chance to go see them and stuff. And they always do. They always come by even when we're there
And
for a
people
weekend.
are like, you can't remember. I'm like, I totally do. We've seen you like 10 years. But, for me personally, it's like, I feel like now, like those consumer shows still, it's like, I don't want to see them go away. And I feel like we have to go to them a handful. And like I said, we don't like to be gone quite as much as we used to. Obviously, now we got little kids at home and stuff. But in reality, I said, that's like the one thing I still see families doing together. And I love that. You'll see the mom and dad out there. You see kids out there. You see couples out there. You see grandparents out there. And
Yeah, like
I
circus
love
has
that
gone
people
away,
are
all
still,
these things have gone away, and
that they're
someone-
still out there, like
Right.
as a family. And I feel like, you really have to support that. And then too, I feel like too, it's not that you're trying to stereotype things, but when we have people come through our line, I can pick up on people that, they probably have a tough life.
Yeah.
Things are probably not great at home. It's like, they're single parents and, moms just stories. And I feel like a lot of times, you know, like when we sit and talk to them, more so probably me than even Lee, you know, and I make them talk to me and tell me what they like to do and tell me what their favorite things are and tell me, you know, what their name is, what they're going to do. You know, high schoolers, I'm always like, what are you going to do after high school? You know, I mean, I make them actually talk to me and tell me a little about them.
Tiffany, a lot of times I go, you know, tell our guys work for, hey, go get their address.
Yeah.
And stuff, and she'll send people their bows and
just
and
my
stuff,
old
because there might
camo,
be just
some
people
stuff.
that you know, there's people that come up and ask you, hey, can I have your bow or something? You're like,
I
nah.
never give it to them.
But it's like, you know, people that are just like, well, I'd like to, but I just don't have the money to do it right now and stuff. So Tiffany will.
A lot of times I'll send something special
We'll
or just
send-
keep in contact
Yeah.
with them. But it's like, so I just feel like that a lot of people say, I can't believe you guys do those shows. I actually can say with 100% sincerity, I love to do those shows because
Yeah.
I like to, I mean, and of course now as a cancer survivor and, you know, losing my mom to cancer and stuff, it's like the amount of people that come through there. I mean, I have to like legit hold it together some days when people tell me their stories and tell me people that they've lost and themselves and stories and stuff. So it's like,
Yeah, it's amazing now
I
that
really,
you know,
really
that
enjoy
was
going to
public
those
with
shows.
Tiffany and her mom. It's like
And that was tough for me,
it's
to
like
be honest.
everyone has those stories,
Right.
and so half the people that come through, half want to talk about deer and half talk about, you know, Tiffany about Linda
yeah.
and stuff.
And even, like you said, about half and half now. I mean, it's like, but still the same common thing is always hunting that brings us all back together.
But it's taught you so much about humanity and
It
people.
really has. And it's way
yeah.
better than people think that it's going to be. But I mean, really, let's be honest. Although I guess hunters fight amongst each other on social media. Social media does bring out the worst in
media.
it. I know, it does bring out the worst in it. But it's like, really, if you could take all of like hunters and everybody and just kind of put them in an area, you might have a little squabbling though, but once you kind of.
Not really though. I
get
think you
that
put people
over it.
face to face.
Yes,
not.
I was just
People,
gonna say,
like,
but
on
people
social
won't say
media,
things
they
to your
say
face.
things they'd never say to your face. That's why I don't look at it. I don't even look. I don't even know how to get on Instagram or anything. And most of it is because of that. You know, it's just like, hey, I'll go to shows and I'll talk to people to their face because nobody's ever said anything negative. Everyone's been awesome and they're
real
fun
there.
and they talk to you. But like on social media, when people, you know, they're just a nameless, faceless
They're
person
bullies.
behind
Yeah,
a
behind a
computer
keyboard.
screen.
Yeah.
You know, they'll say the meanest, nastiest, untrue things. So I said, I don't need that in my life. I just go by, work every day, and I'll talk to people face to face.
Do y'all get? I think the only negative comment we've ever received was like, "Shut those calls up," which I get it. If you're not in the call business, it gets annoying very
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah, day 8.
But that's probably. I've never had anybody come up and say, "Oh, you horrible hunters," and it's.
No.
But I mean,
No.
granted, they paid money to get in there, so you're not going to have that crowd in there. But probably the biggest complaint I've ever had again is like, "Shut up," you know.
We have very,
Do you
very
all ever
little.
get?
Mm-mm.
I was
We
gonna
have
say,
very little
Jenny.
anti-hunting stuff. We have very little. You know, you hear the people who are like, their kids get crap about it, but we don't have any of that. And I think a lot of it is just, we live the life. You know what I mean? It's not like we're like fake. We're not doing this just for a job or
The
whatever.
only thing
It's
that
like,
you ever
this
get is high fence stuff.
high
What's
fence, yeah.
And, it's
And
like,
then that's just
that's
silly.
just so old
I'm
right
like,
now.
I
It's
know.
like,
I'm
hey,
like,
if you
do you got
actually watched our
anything
show
else?
or knew anything about us, you'd
I'm like, we
you'd
live
know
in
that.
Southeast
So that's-
Iowa. You don't have to hunt a high fence.
Yeah.
But I mean, we get very, very little of that. But we also don't do the high, like the, you don't do the giraffe. I mean, I personally would never. I know shooting a giraffe is legal. I personally would never shoot a giraffe. I have no desire to shoot a giraffe. But it's like we don't do any of the
Sure.
the giraffes, the elephants, that kind of
Crazy
stuff that
exotics.
are really like
Controversial.
yeah, the controversial.
Yeah.
And even if you
animals, it's
did,
like-
I think for us, we don't. Maybe right when it started, you'd get some people on social media. We just never engage with them. We just block them
Block
and just
'em,
don't.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like
'Cause
that's
you're
what they
never gonna
want.
win
It's just a
on that
small
stuff.
group of people anyway that are those people. So they just want to engage with you and stuff. We just don't engage,
And I
so they
don't
don't
even
bother
need that
anymore.
publicity. You know what I mean? I think
Yeah.
some of even the ladies out there, they're like, "Oh, this is good. This could be on TV." I'm like, "No, I don't need that."
Yeah, we don't need
You
that
know?
kind of publicity at all.
So a lot of times I laugh at it. Like I posted, it was before turkey season. I posted a run and gun hunt that we did, and you get all these. I think I read it to you all when
Right.
we had a meeting one time. It was all these positive comments, and this one guy, like I don't know where he came from. He was just like, "You are an absolute disgrace to hunting." And he wasn't even anti.
Yeah.
My style of hunting, he was
just
bashing me like, "You are awful at this.
Yeah.
You should stick to screaming at
Why are
ducks
you
and
using
geese."
a
and,
decoy or
oh
something?
my
He had
God,
his thing that
he
yeah.
ripped me apart. But the thing is the next 15 comments, guys were on top of him like
Yeah.
white
Yeah,
on
they'll
rice.
usually
It
figure it
polices
out.
itself, you know.
It does.
And
I mean,
I
even
thought
just
it
the food
comical. I'm
plot,
like,
you know.
this is one unhappy individual.
Yeah,
you
but I
know?
think if you've met that guy on the street, he would never say, "Hey, hey, I like that. You know, they would never be like that. A lot of it is jealousy. You know, especially you see when somebody shoots a big deer, it's immediately when you get a lot of decent, the good people are like, hey, congratulations, but there's just so many. Oh, if I could hunt what you do, or I do this, or you're high fence. That's people that are just jealous, and they would never say that to your face. It's just, you know, I mean, that's just human nature. I mean, you know, everybody's that way.
Yeah.
I mean, some of us don't voice it, but you still are jealous of people that have things that you don't, and things, you know, I mean, I wish I had this, I wish I had that.
Covet thy neighbors.
Yeah, that's her wife, and I don't think there's covet thy neighbor's deer.
Yeah, I was like, that should be a commandment.
Covet thy neighbor's deer.
There's always going to be haters. That's what everybody says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it is just through jealousy, and it's,
That
you
would
know,
be a
I
good
think if you
shirt.
talk
Yeah.
to 90% of those people, they would never be like that to your face.
Do you know, of all the times, you guys remember Archery Talk? Archery Talk used to be really
On the web,
bad.
it's
yeah,
like a
like
forum.
a forum.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that
still-
used to be terrible. And it's so funny because, like, some of our guys would get really into it. And you know what? A lot of the guys that work with us, they're like my brothers, you know what I mean? So they'd read things and they get all, like, muffy about it and stuff. But it's so funny because they're like, all right, well, we're going to be here, here, and here. And you come and talk to us and we'll show you pictures and all this stuff. Not one time has anybody ever, like, when they
Take
get
you up
called
on
out,
it,
has
yeah.
ever taken anybody up on it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But Archery Talk used to be the worst on that.
So it was a forum?
Yeah,
That
it
was,
was a forum.
so that was pre-social
Big.
media.
Free
Yeah.
social
Yeah.
media. It was
We
a
had
forum.
the Avery Waterfowl Forums.
We had
Oh,
KentuckyHunting.com was
Yep.
a big
That
one.
was a bad one.
and
There was-
people would write pages of things, you know.
Yeah.
I'm like, how do you have much time on
I
your
know.
hands?
Well, those you didn't like. Even at least, I guess Facebook and Instagram, you're a little bit more accountable because you have to have an image. Maybe toward the forums. I mean,
It's
on the
straight up
waterfowl,
nameless,
it'd be goose, rocker, knocker, greenhead,
Yes, they were named.
and they could say whatever they wanted. You know,
Yeah,
half the
it's
time it
too
was
bad.
a 12-year-old just trying to
Yeah.
get under your skin. You know.
Yeah,
But,
and we learned from our friend Spencer Halford, like, because we call him, what do you call him, the quack whisperer?
No, the quack addict,
The quack addict, because it's like we hunt with
the quack dealer.
He's a big Arkansas
dealer.
public land guy, you know, and it's like you go down there, they'd be, he would, are they flying here? Are they flying
Yeah,
there? Are you flying
it's
here?
funny. He's like his phone is going constantly. But asking, okay, well, what is it? Well, we're on the Black River, and they weren't there this morning, but we can go over to the other river here or there. And he, like I said, he's like a quack dealer. Is what they call him.
That's what Lee always called
because
him.
he's like a drug dealer for ducks. Everybody wanting to know where they can get them, and where are they at, and where they're.
Get the
Because he just
info.
has his finger on the pulse of what ducks are doing every day.
But he was so funny though, because he would be like, "Did you read on the Arkansas Public Land Forum?" And I'm like, "There's a public land forum in Arkansas?" Oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
not a
it's stuff
single
like,
piece of truth is probably.
oh,
it's all.
exactly.
There's more lies and more. They're killing them great in the back hole.
Yeah,
Head back
it's-
there.
It was funny though, but
That is
So
funny.
I'm real excited. We're going on an elk hunt here in a couple
Yeah.
days.
couple
and-
days.
I know, and you know, growing up deer hunting here in Kentucky, hunting, you know, rabbits and squirrels and quail, and then all of a sudden, you know, deer. And you know, for me to get, you know, lucky enough to, you know, start traveling, and I've been on some other, you know, hunts outside of my home in Kentucky. I mean, it's so neat to go hunt other species, and you all have gotten to kind of do a lot of
Yeah.
that as your careers evolved. What's it been like, you know, doing that kind of first, you know, developing obviously this huge love of whitetails, but then, you know,
That's
trying
been the greatest thing for me. You know, sometimes you wake up and you pinch yourself. It's like, how in the world did you ever finagle your way into getting paid to go hunting? You know, it's just, like I said, it's just so thankful and so blessed in so many ways to do that. But, you know, like the whitetail is always, you know, still is my favorite. But, you know, just being able to have the opportunity has been the greatest thing, you know, on this show, to be able to go to the Utahs and the, you know, just all basically everywhere and hunt all these different animals, because number one, it's just so different and so enjoyable, and just the different places and the people you meet. I mean, it's more the people than anything. I mean, that's why we love this spot in Utah, and you'll see it when you're done. You'll say, oh man, the Tom and that whole Land family, you'll just fall in love with those people. It's the people more than anything almost there that we keep going back for. So, I mean, there's just so many things that you just would have never imagined as a kid, you know, to be able to meet these people and go to these places. And just as a hunter, everything you hunt, it makes you better. You know, when you thought you're a great whitetail hunter, well, then you'll go and you'll get your butt schooled by elk and by mule deer and stuff and anything, and sheep, and you'll be like, man, here, I thought I was good. I didn't know anything. And then you kind of start mastering, okay, now I got the mule deer thing, man. I've figured out how, okay, I know what I got to do to shoot those. And then it just, that makes you a better whitetail hunter, you know, just in different ways. And then you get to be a better elk hunter. And everything that you do, you know, like you said, you become a better overall hunter at everything. And just to have that opportunity to go hunt those, I mean, go to Greenland, shoot muskox and stuff like that, it's just, I mean, I would have never dreamed that I'd ever be able to do that as a kid. You know, you look at magazines. I talked about my grandpa had just stacks of the old Outdoor Life magazines and Sports Field, and you'd look at some of that stuff, and you just dreamed about it someday, never thinking that you actually could. You know, my dad was a bricklayer, and so we didn't have any money growing up or anything, and it was like it was
No
something just to
land,
go to.
nothing.
No land. We lived. You know, I could look out my bedroom window into my neighbor's bedroom window, and it was like, you know, that was stuff that you just dreamed about. Never thought it would actually come true. We didn't have any land. We didn't have anything. We just go hunt the big national forest up in Minnesota.
Right.
And for it to come around this way, to have our lives work out this way, has just been, like I said, I just sometimes think I'm going to wake up from a dream someday and I'll be 12 again, just dreaming about it. But I just, you know, we're just so blessed to be able to have, you know, this opportunity. And you know, the way that it happened is just by accident, basically, too. We didn't even really try.
Well, it's been a little hard work too, I'd say.
Yeah, but I've always had hard work is no problem for me. I would, no matter what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You know, you work real hard at it. But, you know, to have that fall into our laps, like I said, when we didn't, that's a whole nother podcast in itself.
Oh,
but,
I know.
You know how that started, but it
Yeah.
just fell into our lap. We never tried to, really. So, but
Yeah.
everything that you were doing led up to it. You can see it now, but there was no social media. There was no any of that stuff back then. So we were just, I was writing articles and stuff for magazines and, you know, doing stuff for Matthews and Scentlock and all the different people at the time that just doing pictures and stuff and never asking for anything. You know, but you didn't know if people were watching or noticed it or anything like that. But then, you know, when all of a sudden we had a couple of companies ask, hey, you want to host a TV show for us? And we're just like, where'd that come from? But then now you look back at it, we were doing a lot of stuff for people and doing a good job for them and never asking for anything for it.
And you know what? That's, again, this is a totally different podcast, but you bring up a great point. Because I've followed the same models, like, don't ever – you all are not in the position that you're in because either, A, you're great hunters or you're the greatest shot or whatever. It's because – and I'm talking – the reason companies look at y'all is because you're good people. They know you're going to go to the shows, and there is no risk that you're going to upset somebody that when you're representing their brand. And even with our company, we get, you know, emails daily. Hey, will you sponsor me? Will you do this? And I've told everybody, I'm like, I've never asked for a single thing from a single company. You know, like, I never have. They just, when the time is right, it'll, you know, it will happen. Out. Just be a good part. That is the most important thing. There's guys that are world champion callers. They couldn't pay me to put my name on their brand. Like, I'm not, or on their, to allow them to represent my brand. There's more value in good people that are willing to help people that are genuinely good. And the whole thing is, don't ask for anything.
That's what I get people all the time. I shot this big deer, you know, how much do you think it's worth? And I said, it's nothing. I mean, I said, if you want to get anywhere, who do you like? You see if there's a company you like and give it to them. So they don't need you. I mean, the thing is, you have to prove to yourself that, you know, people that think you're a good person and you're a safe bet and stuff will come to you. But just like my mom always told me, she said, just do more for other people than they do for you, and you'll be happy, and you'll live a good life. And that's what we always do. I always try to give more than you take on anything. And so like Tiffany will tell you that, I'd do anything for anybody, and I never expect anything. And I think it's just that you start doing stuff for people, and they think, like, when it came time to do the show, and like, okay, we need a sponsor for the show. He's like, go to Matthews. Well, heck, this guy's been writing articles. He's never asked us for a thing. I've never given him a bow. He's bought bows every year from us, and he's been pushing and pushing and pushing Matthews' bow. Well, yeah, this is a guy that he's done a lot for us. Why not? You know, and the same thing for a lot of companies. You know, so I think that's the way you get started in it, isn't going and asking for stuff. You do and do and do for people, and don't ask anything in return. Yeah. And then when that time is right, you know, when some opportunity comes up, if they're going to pick you or some, you know, X guy over here to host a show or to work for him or whatever, they'll look at you and say, well, this guy's never done anything. Look at the stuff this guy's done for us. They're going to pick you every time. Yeah. That's how you get into it. And that's what we did. I never had any intention of doing the show. I was a chemical engineer, and Tiffany was a flight attendant. And we were just happy to be involved in the hunting industry at all, doing videos for Realtree and stuff. And so we never asked for a nickel for anything, not from videos, not from anything. We spent our own money on cameras and everything else. I was just thrilled to be part of it. And, and that's the way it worked. Companies come down and look at it and say, man, this guy's doing stuff for us for years. He never asked for anything from us.
Yeah.
And that's how let's pick that guy.
I think that's a good life lesson.
Oh,
I don't know if to
sure.
bring it all the way back to
Oh
the
my
kids.
gosh.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I've got goosebumps, just thinking about that, and just worrying about your side of the street doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And the rest will come to you if you do, the right thing. That's such a good statement you made. So.
Right. And I've always said that too, just about, Tiffany and I are both, Christian people and stuff. And I think that's, like I say, I just do help anybody no matter what. There's people that have said nasty stuff about us and all things that behind your back, and and just all the jealousy type thing. And Tiffany said, "Why are you even talking to them?" I said, "People will say stuff
Because I'm
behind."
a girl, so I
say
hold on to
things.
it a little longer than Lee does.
Yeah, I said, people will say things when you're not there that they don't really mean. I said, just pretend like you didn't hear that. Just treat them the way that you treat anyone else.
But he's always been right.
But I just think that God looks down at you and said, this is a good person. Just, okay, I'm going to let some good things happen to him. And I just look at it, like I said, sometimes I feel like I pinch myself. How did I get into this? But I think a lot of it goes back to, hey, I try to be the best person I can and try to help everybody that I can and never ask anything in return. And I think you get rewarded for that.
Right.
And it goes back to your kids. If you can teach that, that's one thing I always remember still from my mom when I was a kid. Just do more for people than they do for you, and that they expect, and you'll do good in life. So that's just a good.
I always said, like my dad, he said, you never ask for anything, and if I ever catch you bragging, I will whoop your ass on anything. He said, be humble, and even to this day, like I can't. Like if my dad ever thought I was doing any of that stuff, he would probably walk through that door right now and be like,
And that's why some of us weren't built for social media stuff. Like
Right.
For me, I mean, you got to be a self-promoter, and I'm not a self-promoter at all. I can never say, hey, look at me, look what I did. It's like, it kind of speaks for itself. I just kind of lead by example. Even our employees, I'm a terrible boss. And like our employees are like, I never really tell them what to do or talk to them. I just say, I don't know. I'm terrible at that. I need to maybe hire somebody else if they need that. But I'm not. I just kind of get up every day, and you can ask any of my employees. There's nothing that'll make them do that I don't do myself. And most of the time, if it's a really crappy job, I'll go do it myself. Just so I don't want them to think, oh, he's making me do this crappy stuff. And I said, well, I'm paying them to do it. I should, but I don't. I just get up before them, and I work later than them. And I just kind of lead by example. And they'll see me working, and like Winston has been great. I mean, he's out working at 10 at night and stuff, and he never asks, oh man, we're not supposed to do this. But at the same time, I say, no, there is no there's no 2 weeks vacation. You take all the vacation you want. If we're done, take off and do whatever you want. Like Winston's hunting right now, and it's like, hey, we work when we have to, and we have fun when we're in the downtime. But I just kind of terrible at that. I don't like to tell people what to do. I just kind of. Hopefully they'll just follow my lead and see what I'm doing. So okay, he's out busting it every day. I should just do the same.
Or he's done it in the past. I always think you should be able to do everything and not. That's a problem I think with kids these days. They think they've immediately got to have a high-powered job, or they don't have to start sweeping a floor or cleaning something dirty. I mean, that's a great lesson is to teach your kids,
That's what I do with Cameron in the morning. We pack a lunch, and I say, okay, come on, we're getting the tractor. We're going to work today. And he'll be out there at 6 in the morning, walk with his little shorts on, little muscle shirt on. And he's got his little Under Armour lunch box. And we got to go to work today.
Yeah.
But he loves it, but just still same thing, kind of get him into that, hey, we got to work. And he's a little bit young right now, but I tell Tiffany and everybody, I said, no, even like Murphy, a buddy's of mine, he's going to be shooting these giant deer, and he's going to have everything he wants. I said, nah, I mean, that's not the way it's going to work. I mean, I can get, probably bows for free for him this time, but, I'll make him work for it. But we have, we can go cut hedge trees, and every Saturday down in Keosauqua, they have I think right by our house, they have an auction. And so you can bring alfalfa bales or hay bales and, a lot of times the hedge posts for fencing and stuff. So that's what we're going to do. When he's like 12, okay, you're going to go out, and if you want something, we're going to go out and we're going to mow hay and alfalfa, and we're going to bring those bales down there on the weekends, and you're going to sell them. But you just need to show them that, you got to work to get things that you want, not just give it to them. Yeah. And it's good, like we don't live in the city. That'd be a lot harder. But for us, we got unlimited amount of things you can do. Even as simple as, hey, we're just farming. Okay, now when we harvest, we just bring it, and we sell it. So they see that, okay, there's work that goes into it. Like Cameron here every night, where are you going, Dad? We're going hunting. I got to go to work. You'll go to work pretty soon too. But we'll be right back. We always come back. But just kind of teach them that, we got to go to work every day, even though we don't want to, and just try to instill a good work ethic. And there's just all those things, those good lessons I would say, like from my mom and just like my dad. I always say it too. It's like my dad worked like every day. I mean, he worked his own jobs on the weekends. That man worked his fingers to the bone, and he was the one guy. He'd come home like on a weekend and working all weekend. Hey, Dad, can you bring us to the movie? To drive-in movie. Like all my kids on our street, their dads now wouldn't do it. My dad, yeah, I just can't. To this day, I just still so admire him for that, because you didn't think of it at the time, but you just knew my dad. If you go ask him, yep. And now I see how much he worked and stuff that you're like, gosh, wow. I can't believe that he piled 16 of us neighbor kids in the station wagon. Yeah. We'd all sit on the top at 100 Twin Drive-In, and he'd buy popcorn, and you just never thought anything about it, but he did that for everyone.
Sure.
I think that's kind of like where I get it from. Just, hey, just do, even if you don't want to, you just do things for people. But then on the other hand, it's like, maybe that's why my dad worked every weekend, because we had 7 kids, because I have 2, and sometimes like, oh my gosh. And he's like, how do you manage with 7? Maybe he went to work every day to get away from us. I don't know.
Well, my grandmother lived to 100, and she did not stop. She was like that. I mean, just constantly working, doing things for people, and I think that's a key to longevity, is just staying busy. Yeah. I mean, and
for sure.
And you want to start that at a young age and keep it going, because it's important. So
yeah, I remember like my 2 sets of grandparents. My one grandparents lived in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Love them to death. He was a businessman. Owned a state farm agency. They traveled all over the world, and when we go down there, it was like, all right, we're going to go to Washington D.C. They spent a lot of money on us and just bought us things. We didn't get to see them that often. My other grandparents, who lived in Crestwood, when we went to their house, we were trimming, fence lines, taking care of the horses. They had horses till they're 89 years old.
Jeez.
They took care of them themselves. And when we went there, we were raking leaves, burning the burn pile, cleaning stalls, driving the tractor. And those were the ones that I remember. It was like, man, I love going to Nana and Paul's house. And
we were just talking about that, actually, because his brother is just kind of in a crossroads of life. And he's like, wait, I want the house that my kids want to come to. He's like, I don't want the house that.
Yeah, because we had one of my grandparents lived like in a little townhouse, so we'd go there and visit them. Even though you loved them, there was nothing to do. You'd sit in there. Do nothing. My other grandparents had a giant house with big giant chicken coop and animals and horses, and as we were hunting and stuff, and it's like, man, you just couldn't. Yeah, I gotta go to these grounds. As a kid, you don't think about it. As an adult, you're like, man, you should have loved both of them. But as a kid, you didn't care. You just wanted to do what was fun. But like for us too, it's nice we live in the country and stuff. It's like there's always fun stuff to do. So you'll always have the house, that your grandkids want to come to.
Sure.
That's like my brother, because he has like, he was a U.S. Marshal until he retired like at 50, and he's like, okay. Because he'd already had like 30 years in. Okay, so now he went back because he was too bored on that. But then
he's got 2 little kids.
Yeah, so they live in like a townhouse, a smaller house now and stuff, and just a townhouse. He's like, I gotta get a house out. I'm looking like we bought a cabin up in northern Minnesota. I want to move up there because I want my grandkids. I want them to be the fun house. I want to be living in a townhouse. They come over and sit around and do nothing over here. I want, so that's what we're just helping them. All right, well, let's go. Why don't you want to buy our cabin and you can be up there, So that's you think about all that stuff too. All the things that you did when you were a kid that were fun. I want to make sure you have that for them.
Yeah, it's important stuff. But well, thank you guys so much for
thank
chatting
you
with us.
For sure. We're an hour and 43 in right now.
Do you want to start our little tradition or keep our?
You want me to start
going?
it, or do you want?
Yeah, you start it.
All right. So, I guess my tip is going to be, and it'll be relatable. And it was kind of a topic I wanted to get on, but there's so much to talk about. But I guess with kids, from what I'm learning and what I remember with my dad, is my advice to parents out there, moms or dads, is you're a hunter and a fisherman, and you want your kids to become hunter and fishermen also, obviously. But don't forget that your journey from when you had an interest in it all the way to where you are now, I don't care if you can only hunt on weekends or if you hunt for a living. Remember your own journey, and remember that they need to make their own journey as well. So when you go out there to hunt and fish, you're probably performing at an elevated level because that's a rite of passage. You know, killing big deer, turkeys, doing it on your own, it's a rite of passage that you learn through mistakes and trial and error through your entire course. And I don't care if you get into hunting when you're 25 or 50 or 80. I don't care. But if you're introducing your kids, remember that they're not going to perform to your level. You know, so don't expect them to. Don't be the dad that like, well, if you're going to blow that duck call, you better blow it right. Don't mess around on it. Or, son, be quiet. We're in the woods, you know. And I find myself do it. Like, I guess my one rule is we don't yell in the woods. You never yell in the woods. You're quiet. But, like, last year I took my son deer hunting. I took him deer hunting, all right? We got all camoed up. We put on face paint. He had his bow. I took my bow. We weren't hunting it. It's a walk in the woods. It might last 5 minutes. It might last 3 hours. I'm on his watch, his time. If he wants to walk, we'll walk. If he wants to sit, we'll sit. We're going to eat snacks. He looked for alligators hiding in logs. He, you know, he shot arrows at trees, and it was a fun adventure for him. I'm not there to hunt, and I'm not going in there just thinking, we got to kill a deer. I got to show my son how us men do it, you know? And I guess, and I even now catch myself, like, when we're on the river, my wife's always with me, my kids are always with me, and I try to fish while I'm with my kids, and the kids will be swimming, I'll be catfishing, I'll be like, hey, you know, be quiet, we're on the boat, or I'll throw the pole out, and my 3-year-old wants to just immediately reel it in. I'm like, no, you got to let it sit, and she'll kind of give me that look, like, remember, let him reel it. I'm like, reel it in. I don't care if we catch a fish or not, you know. So I guess the biggest thing is, and I see a lot of times working shows is when, you know, someone will come up and their kid will be blowing a duck call, and I'll look at the parent and say, you know, he'll kind of give them that look like, hey, don't goof off with the call. Blow the call right. And my advice is actually, no, that kid can actually learn more by playing Jingle Bells on the duck call than,
he'll learn the sounds and
exactly.
What it takes
It's
to make
muscle
the sound.
memory that he's building. So wrapping this up in a nutshell, just be patient with your kids. Don't have these huge expectations that they're going to perform at your level. Don't think that they're going to embarrass you. Let them fail at what they're doing because they're going to learn from it, and that's just my piece of advice.
It's funny you say that because I'm spinning that right into as taking new hunters out. Basically, use all the advice you're just saying about kids, because I mean, actually, I was even laughing because it's like I always wanted to call in a turkey with a mouth call. Lee cannot really use a mouth call all that well, but in reality, every time I practice, he's like, "You're horrible." And I'm like, you shouldn't tell me that. You should just be like, you know what? That's awesome that you're playing Jingle Bells right now. I mean, it's like, you got to almost do the same thing as you do with a kid as you do a new hunter. You keep them warm. You bring snacks. You keep it fun. You let them do, you know, if they want to sit out there for an hour, you sit out there for an hour. You want to sit out there for 3 hours, you sit there for 3 hours. But I've always said, you know, I'm like, don't ever bring a new hunter. And I don't care if it's girls, boys, men, women, out into the woods where you're not going to see anything, and it's going to be, you know, for us, you know, 20 below. It's like, that's horrible. Who would ever want to go back out there? It's not fun. It's not a good experience. It's like, why would you want to do that? But if you make it fun and a great experience right off the bat, especially if you're teaching them how to shoot, or if you're teaching them, you know, how to use a bow, or, you know, even hang a tree stand, it's like, if you make it fun, they're always going to want to do it. They're going to want to be out there just because it's like, you're having a good time, so it's regardless of the fact if anything was accomplished, but it's like at least you're having fun out there. But B, you know, it's like if you reward and, you know, success breeds success. So it's like if you make it a good time, they're going to want to do it. But I think that's, like I said, I'm like, why don't you ever say that to me when I'm playing a duck call? She's like, you suck. And I'm like, yeah, but I would like to get better.
Yeah.
That's probably because I don't know anything about it.
Duck calls you do.
Yeah,
You can put
yeah,
duck calls.
ducks, yeah.
So that's my advice. And, you know, the other thing is like, get them set up the right way. It's like, you know, I understand a lot of people do not want to spend a lot of money on gear, and I get that. But it's like, even if you're going to bring, because my girlfriend is Tina Dockin, who's also married to our dog trainer, and she's a huge waterfowl hunter, huge upland hunter and stuff. But she was like, why are there not more new women into duck hunting? And I'm like, well, I think part of it is because to get them out there, it's a substantial drop. You know, you're going to be dropping some money. They need waiters. It's not like you can just be like, oh, just use mine out there. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
But
Right.
I'm like, I think a lot of times they just, you know.
Well, let's face it, like waterfall stuff it's got to be a love for it.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
It's a lot of work for a
Yeah.
little reward. Like I said, me and my buddy Paul, we'd spend 5 hours pushing a boat out in the bog and stuff to get out there to shoot for half an hour, and it was done, and you were so thrilled just to do that. And so until they get a real love for it, it's hard to just take a new person out there and they go through all that stuff, and then you get all the way out there and you don't even see a duck, and that happens a lot. And then, nothing, they well, that's not all that fun. So, and they kind of grow into it, maybe.
And kids, too, you want them to be successful. I mean, get them a gun that fits them properly, put it on a tripod or whatever, because a miss can be devastating for a kid. You got to teach them that's a part of it, but you want them to really have the right gear so they're not cold. And
you don't want to get the scope bite like your daughter did. I mean, that is horrible. It's like then they get scared, and it's like you just have to be smart of how you introduce them. It's like I said, we're not going to take Cameron out there and be like, okay, you need to sit here and you need to be quiet,
right?
And you're not going to move. And it's like, well, I don't do that. Why would you expect my 4-year-old to do that? So
being uncomfortable is not what they expect to be, and as you become more proficient, you get better at being uncomfortable in certain situations.
You're more willing to accept it too.
Like, especially for turkey hunting. I don't know how many times I've been in a position where I'm like cramped up. I'm like, man, I really need to move. But I know if I make myself comfortable, that bird is gone, and you learn that over time.
And if I sit up comfortably, I'm never going to shoot a turkey. It's always when I'm contorted like 17 different ways that I'll shoot a turkey. I'm like, this setup's never going to work.
It's like you were talking about when you and I first started. I mean, she shot her first deer. It was September 15th. It was nice out, beautiful weather.
Fell over in the field, perfect shot.
Yeah, and so, but you don't start now. You'll go through a lot of miserable times. Look at the times we sat up there with sleet in our face and you cover with ice, and it's like the coldest I've ever been has not been cold weather. The coldest I've ever been was bear hunting. One time you go out there in short sleeve shirts, but then all of a sudden it rains on you, get poured, and then there's a little cold wind, and sometimes you feel like you're going to die of hypothermia. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that cold. At times when it's super cold, you're prepared for it. You wear warm stuff. But we've been out at times where it's been miserable. And now that she's a hunter, and has been for years, you deal with that. But if that was her first time, you wouldn't be hunting again. So you want to make sure those first times at least are fun.
Yeah, those first times
hopefully have
are
a
good.
place that you can be successful, like a turkey hunt. At least you hear them. If you go to a place that you don't even hear any or see any, and kids can lose interest. So there's a lot of things coming to that. But for me, there's lots of tips and advice you can get on things I know about. But since we were talking about kids, try to go there, and I don't know about it because they're still kids. I don't know, but I have an idea in my head just from how I did it, how it worked for me, how I loved it and all that stuff. But I have it in my mind that, and you see it like with Cameron and stuff, even for songs, it's just like normal people. I mean, let's say, okay, his whole thing was John Party for Night Shift. That was his favorite song forever. But then after a week, okay, and they moved on to another one. But you see that with a lot of things, that there's their favorite truck, and they'll play for it every day for a week, but then now they never even look at it again. They got something new. See, their attention span is short, and that's why I just think that maybe people pushing kids too young. Okay, they might even, if you like shooting a bow right now, okay, maybe then in 2 weeks from now he doesn't even want to look at it anymore. So I just kind of let him do what he wants to do, and I think, like I said, I didn't really get into deer and stuff till I was in my teens and stuff. So I think at least wait until he wants to do it. I mean, he'll see us doing it when he says, I want to go hunt. And when he starts seeing his interest peaking, and okay, you got to do this and that. So I think, just pushing kids too young, you might burn them out from it because they have such a short attention span as it is. So that's my plan anyway. We'll see how it goes. But to me, I'm just going to let the kids decide when they want to go. So I'm not going to push them on anything. I think they're around it enough. They see it every day with us. So it's not like I have to introduce them to it. So that's my plan, and I just think that you can burn them out too early and just kind of let them take it at their own pace, because I know I did. My dad took us and stuff, but it was 2 weekends a year, so you look forward to it the whole year. But even then, it was, I was probably 9 or 10 years old. I wasn't very young. When I was very young, I was so into guns and BB guns. I remember my grandpa. I mean, I was like at 5 years old. I'm sure it was maybe even younger than that. I'd sit in the window at my grandpa's and wait for my dad and grandpa and everyone to come home. And if they'd shot a deer, they'd hang it in the woodshed. So I'd go out there with that gun and and I'd shoot. And I shot 1,000 deer before I was 5 years old. I'm sure out there.
Yeah.
But those are from the magazines, reading that stuff. So okay, it's kind of piqued my interest to it. But if it was actually taking me deer hunting, because I saw the magazines and the deer and out in the barn, and it was fun with my gun, going out there and shooting. But I guarantee you, when I was that young, if they would have actually took me hunting, you're sitting there freezing your butt off, sitting there for 5 and 6 hours or an entire day and not seeing any deer, I would have hated it. So I think just keep it fun. You're just letting kids use their imagination and just be outside and playing and stuff, and then
Just
not
being
really
together.
letting them. Yeah, just spend, like I said, spending time with them is what's most important at this age, and I'll let them kind of determine when they want to hunt.
Yeah, the hunting experience, if in your lifetime, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Right.
I think a lot of parents think like, oh man, I can't wait until you're doing this with me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's going to take time, to where you're truly like, man, I enjoy this. Not saying your son or your daughter, but this person, because there's buddies of mine that I love spending time with, but they won't do things a certain way that I will. So, like, honestly, I love turkey hunting most of the time by myself. I enjoy hunting with Austin and maybe a couple other people because we're like-minded.
Right.
I love my wife to death. She's, sorry, sweetie, I'm about ready to say this, but when we're walking through the woods, being from Iowa, when she sees a morel, you can forget about the turkey. But she is a great turkey hunter. But there's people out there that I don't want to hunt with them because we're not on the same level. And I know my kid, it's going to take a long time for them to get to that level to where it's like, man, we're right there together.
Yeah.
It's going to take a lifetime.
And it goes back to what we said about fishing. Like right now, it's great that Cameron, we had the little fishing rod for him, like a little Snoopy rod and reel. But now he can cast the open face reel where he flipped the bail and put his finger on it. He casts it really good. So all the time, and I was so surprised. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that kid can cast like that. But he doesn't, like I always said, just leave the bobber out there till it goes down, then reel it in. But he'll just throw it out there and reel it in. And for a while there, I was like, no, Cameron, leave it out there until you get a fish on there. But then I was like, wait, no. Just if he's having fun, he likes the casting part. So just he reels it in right away. And I was like, why'd you reel it in? Well, because I got to cast it out again. Okay, so now I just fished myself and I just let him cast. And he just casts and reels it in. And so I said, okay, well, if that's what's fun for him, just let him be fun. Just don't try to push him into, catching a fish. Because a lot of times when I get a fish on, then I'll hand it over to him. And
I caught a fish.
Reeling. I caught it in. I caught a fish.
Yeah.
And he's not as interested in that, actually. Like when he catches a fish, he's not like, okay, I want to touch it and hold. I mean, he always wants to touch them, but then they flip so many, it kind of scares him and stuff. So he's like, I want to touch it. So then
He just likes to
every one he
cast.
touches it, and then he wants to cast. He's more interested in casting than he is in catching.
the
So
action,
just leave
yeah.
it. It's like, hey, they'll learn, they'll get it at some point, but I don't want to push him into anything.
Yeah.
Just let him do what he wants to.
It sounds like you guys, I mean, I'm the only one here that has some older kids, and you all are on the right track. I mean, but, the only thing I can add to it with some more experience of having older kids would be that you're going to do some things right. You're going to do some things wrong. I mean, no one's going to be perfect, and you'll make mistakes as a parent. And, but, you guys have already said it. I mean, the main thing is just to make it fun. Go out there and, you'll kind of know as they get older what's appropriate at the time, but eventually we'll want them to appreciate hunting because we've all had hunting experiences that are not fun, but it's fun to us. Like to stand still waiting on a deer while there's mosquitoes biting your ear or, you're getting rained on the back of your neck waiting on a duck or whatever. Sometimes it's kind of suffrage.
It's miserable.
It's miserable, yeah.
I think that's what's fun about
But
it.
it pays off. Yeah.
But that might not, a kid eventually will
sure.
get to that. But like you all were saying, it kind of let that evolve. And, and two, it's, I remember so many early hunts with my son, and he was pretty young. He was, I think, 7 or 8 when he got his first deer, but I felt he was ready and he'd been out with me. But he loved the gear, and we'd pack his little backpack, and he loved all the little things, and I'd let him do that as much as he, even though he probably didn't need half the things in there. But, let them kind of explore the things they want to do. If you're walking to the stand and there's a turtle there, let them stop and play with the turtle for a while. And, but eventually you'll tell when the right time is to kind of up it with a little more pressure to make it a little more serious when they're ready. And you said the key thing is when they're ready.
Yeah.
You don't want to push them too hard. And if they're sitting there and you said, hey, I'm going hunting this weekend, do you want to go? No, sorry, okay.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, and don't take that as that they don't like it or anything like that. They may just, he may be a diehard as any of us when they get older. It's like just when you're kids, I was into deer and snowmobiles and stuff, but the snowmobile stuff, I used to just didn't draw pictures of snowmobiles all day long. So the snowmobile stuff kind of went away and the hunting stuff stayed. But now that's why I like snowmobiles now. I have bought some. We live in Iowa. There's no snow, and I got like 4 of them. And finally we said, we buy a cabin in Minnesota. It just kind of brings me back to when I was a kid. That I loved them. But then for a long time, I didn't even think about a snowmobile. It was all hunting. So things will come and go. And you just got to see what, just
you
Let
plant
them
those
explore.
seeds when
Yeah.
they're really young, and then they may
Yeah,
get
see,
interested in their
some will grow
buddies
and some
more
won't.
or sports, and they might come away from it, but they'll come back to it again and again, and they'll be a little older,
Yeah.
a little more ready for it, or maybe not.
And you almost have to be careful what you wish for, because I feel like, hunters, there's this journey that you're going to take. And I remember specifically when, there's a part where you're extremely hungry for success, and especially in waterfowl hunting. So like here, we're not in a great waterfowl area. There's been days to where I remember as a teenager, kind of in college, that, all right, we can drive 4 hours up to Patoka Lake, and we'll probably shoot a 4-man limit. Or we can hunt the river, and we might shoot a couple ducks. Let's go 4 hours right now. Now I'm going to the river. I'm not blood hungry like I used to be. And I remember specifically my dad, he used to take us to Taylorsville Lake. We saw a duck. We saw 2 ducks every season. And then we started hunting the river. And then my brother and I, we started getting that, I don't want to use the term bloodthirst, but we were hungry for success. We were hungry to do it right and expand, and we're like, Dad, no, we're traveling. You want to go? And we kind of left him behind. He's brought us to that point, and then he wasn't as hungry for it anymore, and we were, so therefore we parted ways. So your little hunting buddy right now who thinks that you hung the moon, and you want to drive them to that point to where then you get to that age where you're either not as hungry for it anymore, or you appreciate different things. Shooting an extra limit of ducks on the river means nothing to me anymore.
Yeah.
I love hot coffee. Sometimes I love hunting with other people. Sometimes I love hunting by myself, but I have different motivations now to go hunt. And I know that I'm hoping that my kids are going to reach that point and be like, Dad, we're going to where we can go shoot the limit. Be safe, guys. Love you,
Right.
Yeah.
So you're right. Be careful what you wish for on trying to bring your kids up too quick.
Right.
But
For sure.
Well, we should have this podcast again in 20 years and see how we
See
did
how-
play
In
there.
5 years.
Yeah.
See, it's like how,
Yeah,
it,
check
how
in
it's
every
going
5 years.
Every 5 years.
Exactly. Yeah, like you said, you're gonna do things right and you're gonna do things wrong, but because it's not like you're raising widgets. They're all individual. Everyone's gonna be different, so you can do
Sure.
some things right and some things wrong, and
And I'm like,
there is no set thing that
I
you
was
can
like,
do.
why
'cause
do these
everyone's
little
different,
humans
but-
have such a definitive personality and
Oh
a
my God.
thought already? I'm like, I mean, why does my 4-year-old think he knows better than me already?
Yeah.
It's
'Cause
incredible.
He's a chip off the old block. That's what his dad was. And all my sisters say, "Oh, you were horrible as a kid." And my mom is up there laughing at me right now, saying, "Yep, you're getting, you're
I
getting
know
back what
that's
you
where I'm
gave to
always
us."
like, why am I being punished?
Wow.
Well, thank you guys so much for
Oh,
joining
thanks
us.
for having us.
It's
Great.
been
Yep.
fun, and you guys are going to get back out there and do some hunting tonight.
Y'all are, it's not far.
Better
Y'all are
get
going to
your
I was
start.
like, wait,
together.
you have an event and we get to go hunting?
I know. I have to go to this thing and put on a coat and tie maybe, but I'd much rather have camo on. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well,
All right.
sounds good. And
Yep.
let's move on to the next adventure.
Good luck this evening, guys.
All right.
We'll see
Thanks,
you.
guys.